We're good. Hi guys, this is the fifth installment of Titan Talks. So this is Jake from BM Coaching, or Jake Dalmedo. Dalmedo? I
Yeah,
can
that's
actually say your second name. How long have I known you know, Jake, and I still can't say your second name. No, it's all right. Nobody can say my name, so it's all good. But yeah, so from BM Coaching, um, you've been working. I met Jake probably how long ago was it now? A year and a half, 2 years ago?
yeah, a year and a half, 2 years, I think now. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been here. Yeah, I've been here a while. I've been at time for a while now, haven't I? Yeah, it's gone fast actually. It's gone very
It's
fast.
gone really quick, yeah. So, I mean, we originally started out in Titan with kind of no rental model as such. I didn't intend to take on any rental personal trainers or anything. That was the original intention anyway. But then Jake got in touch, and you were saying, that you liked what we were doing and so on, and you wanted to coach from here. And I thought, I knew that you had your own business and didn't want to come on with our brand. That was originally how I was hiring PTs otherwise. But I figured, and after speaking to you briefly, I thought, yeah, this could actually work. We could easily run the two side by side without having any clashes. You had your target market as such, and so did I, and they didn't clash. And a lot of our training ideas, philosophies were kind of similar. Educational background was kind of similar, so it made perfect sense. Anyways, over to you, buddy. Introduce yourself and tell them all a bit about yourself.
So obviously, as T said, my name is Jake. Was one of the coaches working at Titan, but under my own brand of BM Coaching and also running Preston Weightlifting Club. Kind of came onto the team because of my partner Alex did a little bit of weightlifting here, and spoke quite highly about kind of the coaching standards, the environment, the atmosphere, and how it seemed like it was a really positive and supportive environment. So yeah, kind of wanted to take it from there. My speciality is kind of working with weightlifters, but also working with people that are following a plant-based or vegan diet. And found that a lot of people would be there's either two kind of responses on what people have towards a plant-based diet. Either they think, oh, it's amazing, it's the best thing ever, or they think it's kind of, oh, it's the worst thing ever, you can't get any protein, you can't get any vitamins or whatever. It's kind of like what I wanted to do with my brand was to look at the gaps in what people were thinking and kind of bring it to the middle, because obviously it can be the worst thing ever if you do it wrong, and it can be, amazing when it's done right. But I think at the same time, sometimes people's expectations of what a plant-based diet can actually do for you is kind of crazy. Like if you go, there's so many people that are like, if you go on a plant-based diet, every medical illness that you've ever had will be gone. Every kind of issue you've ever had is going to be gone, and you'll become super enlightened and you'll change the world or whatever. And a lot of the time,
I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for that one thing, aren't they? They're looking for that single thing. I've seen a thing about intermittent fasting on that app, TikTok.
Yeah.
Some guys talking about, I've become superhuman since fucking using intermittent fasting. I thought, what a load of bollocks. What a load of nonsense. Like, fair enough, you might get slightly raised energy levels and so on. But a lot of that's to do with your buy-in to the diet, as you'll know. A lot of that's to do with your psychological approach or your thoughts on the diet itself. If you believe it's going to do you good, it's going to do you good. In a lot of cases. So
it's the
a
same
lot
thing
of
with
it's
keto and everything like that. You look at all
right?
these keto diets and I went keto and then suddenly I did everything right, or I went this and I did everything right. And then you've got the people on the other end of the camp that are like, oh, keto's the worst thing ever, and then you've got people on the other end, vegan's the worst thing ever, this is the worst thing ever, and it's kind of like a huge circle of all these things that you're either on camp A or camp B, and you can't possibly consider positives of both parts, really.
I think it's down to marketing that. I think that people tend to pick a side, and they like the whole idea of belonging to a community. And if you're in this community, it's like religion, isn't it? If you're in this community, you can't agree with that one, and you can't agree with that one, and you all have to be kind of at each other in a way. There is no middle ground, and a lot of people's marketing, people will just, their way is the only way, and that's just not true. Otherwise, these other groups wouldn't exist, and they wouldn't be getting results. There's a reason why all these other groups are there, and they're also getting results because they have also found a way that works for them that doesn't look like your way at all, but it still works. So who cares?
Yeah, I think this is the thing, and I think because of the ethical side of the plant-based community as well, like the vegan community, we have this whole idea of our way is the right way to do it, but then at the same time we kind of buy into everything that our side say, and then kind of dismiss anything anyone else says. So as soon as anyone mentions me, you go like, oh, that's super unhealthy, or as soon as anyone mentions anything, it's like it's because it's against your message. It's not a positive thing, and I think that's kind of something that I think the plant-based community and the vegan community is actually harming the science that's kind of associated with veganism or with plant-based food. And I think this is something that we kind of need to address, because absolutely I think anyone that is following a vegan diet probably follows as a majority, for health reasons, but a lot of the time more for the ethical side of it. And if we can kind of promote the ethical side of it, but then also the health benefits, but not kind of lie and bullshit about what it actually presents, then I think that's what we need to do for the future.
Well, honesty, it's the age-old saying, isn't it? Honesty is the best policy. I feel like a lot of these guys who are marketing the hard line one way or the hard line the other way, eventually people just, if you've been, for example, taking it from a client's perspective, or someone who's looking at all these different trainers and been looking in and around the fitness industry for a few years, say, trying to lose weight, they're trying to get stronger, or trying to reach whatever goal it is, and they see all these different opinions. And once, what they eventually people come to realize is that everything kind of works. It's whether you work it or not. So it's like the vegan diet can be done, and there's some excellent examples of fantastic athletes who have made the vegan diet really, really work for them in regards to performance and health. I've also seen plenty of people do it really, really badly wrong and be completely malnourished. So you've got, as you said, you've got two sides of the coin. But once I think the kind of longer term clients who have tried a bunch of things already, and they kind of come to realization that, there's not one fix. And I think that's kind of when we like to get the clients. We don't want them when they first come into it and they're like looking for that magic trick.
Yeah.
We kind of want them at this stage when they've had to go with all the magic tricks and none of the magic tricks work, because there's no such thing. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that regard.
I mean, if you look at kind of some of the teachings of kind of like your John Berardi and things like that, they don't look at nutrition as, oh, this is the only way that you can eat. And if you look at how a lot of personal trainers talk, like you look at like your James Smiths and whatever, it's like there's like a set of rules, and you can do this, this, and this, and it has to hit your calories in, calories out, whatever. But they're usually pro whatever their selling is. So for myself, it might be, I'd be super pro plant-based vegan style, or for someone that's kind of like following your keto, they might be super pro keto. And he has a really interesting quote that says that the best diet is a diet that allows you to still live your life the same way you want to live your life, still live your culture the same way you live your culture, and you still hit the ethics that you believe, whatever you believe in. So obviously, if someone's kind of plant-based or vegan, they might want to avoid kind of factory farming, anything that involves any harm of veganism. Or on the other end of things, you could look at like the cultural side. Like if you come from a cultural background, I don't know, like an Italian background, you're still going to want to eat Mediterranean and Italian foods, but you don't want to like just eat chicken and rice every day. So I think it's kind of like sticking to the philosophies that you feel true to, whilst at the same time, eating healthily and eating well. I think that's something that's often missed by a lot of people, especially kind of in the fitness industry, that we have to kind of eat in a certain way or behave in a certain way in order to get the results we want. And I don't think it's always the case.
It's this absolutist behavior, isn't it? It's that absolutist mindset that kind of does a lot of damage to their industry. And that's where you get a lot of people complaining about PTs who didn't, made them unhealthy or made them unwell. And it's this absolutist attitude, because you have to be reminded. I mean, what we know of the human body and what we know about science so far, whilst it's probably a lot considering, how far we've studied up to, but realistically, we don't know, even as a global society, in regards to science, we don't know as much as we'd like. Nowhere close, not even close to that. We have no idea how much the human mind, for example, affects the human body and vice versa. We have no idea of the extent of that yet. We barely understand mental health, for example, barely. We barely understand um, even performance parameters. There's so much we don't understand about that. I mean, if you look at any decent paper written in the last 10 years, you could still question their methods and still question how they've done things and whether or not that's valid or reliable. There's just far more questions than there is answers, and I think there's an arrogance in the fitness industry, especially from the personal trainers who go through these 12-week courses and fucking whatever. Even if they're 2-year courses or I don't care what it is, it's just not long enough. It's just not. You need a lot of time and patience to really get good at your trade.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the time we look at kind of like a lot of the time, especially kind of us both, because we both look at research as well. Like I think a lot of people kind of I've started to look into research now, but I think just because something is a research paper doesn't mean it's any good. It can have there's information out there that's, there's information in some paper that someone studied it doesn't necessarily mean that the information that they presented or what they've researched is actually correct, because, so many people have got so many different, the way everyone's built is so different. They could have, easily picked 10, 20 applicants, 10, 20 participants that are just exceptions to many of the rules that a lot of us kind of face. So I think, and as well, that the world's changing so quickly that we're finding out, things that we coached 10 years ago, we're no longer coaching now because, they've been proven, disproven and whatever. And this is kind of happening on a regular basis. So the only thing we can really do is work with what we've got, and hopefully that information that we have is correct. And I think this is a problem that a lot of people have, is that they look at all this information and they don't really know what to go on. They don't really know what to choose. Mm-hmm. So they have these kind of biased decisions on, oh, that's healthy, that's unhealthy. And they like this black and white, oh, if you eat this, it's healthy. If you eat this, it's unhealthy. And, that's just how it is. But unfortunately, I think nutrition is a little bit more complex than that. And we can't just decide that,
Yeah, I one of my clients actually recently asked me if sugar was basically asked me if sugar was the devil and was the root of all evil, and I was like, well, no, people were saying, she basically said sugar's bad, and I said, no, it's not, because you need it for brain function for a start. You need to have some glycogen there to break down the glucose to use for your brain function. That's pretty much 90% of your brain fuel is glucose. And this blew her mind. She just couldn't get this idea. Yeah. Sugar did some good in your body, there's just been, remember what in the early 2000s, the big attack was on fats. It was on saturated fats, remember? And then they started researching European cultures and were actually these are really high in saturated fat, but much healthier than the UK. What's going on there? And they started looking at antioxidant profiles and stuff like that. But also, they just in nutrition alone, they didn't. Then they attacked sugar because they couldn't figure out what else. And then there was this study that done a comparison study between the effects of cocaine and sugar in your brain, and they were saying that sugar affected your brain just like cocaine did.
Right. Okay.
It's the addictive quality of sugar that's really bad. But if you look at a lot of island cultures, they're really high in fruit, really high in sugar, and they're perfectly healthy. Especially indigenous people, they're really high in fruit and fruit and fish essentially, and they're perfectly healthy. There's no issues there.
I think it's absolutely crazy. You've got cultures all over the world. You've got so many different types of eating the way they eat, and they're all predominantly, as long as it's not overly processed, if they're eating pretty much whole foods, you've got pretty much really healthy cultures, but they're eating completely different foods, and that's just how developed the human body is, that they can thrive in so many different, so many different food sources. You've got, your Eskimos that are eating kind of just fish and whatever, pretty much. And then you've got kind of on your other end, you've got your South Americans where there's a high amount of wheat and fruit and all that kind of stuff. It's quite interesting that both sides of those kind of on the world, they're able to still remain healthy. And it's super interesting just on how diet can affect the body. if it's just not. Basically, the last 100 years, we've messed up diet and made it super complicated.
I know it's true that actually. You said it well there when you mentioned whole foods. I mean, a good place to start for any person is just to start off eating whole foods. Don't eat avoid most of your packaged processed stuff. And it's very hard to do nowadays. I mean, I just had a packaged sandwich. I mean, here's some being a hypocrite as such. There's preservatives and there's all sorts of stuff in that. But realistically, it's about using common sense and kind of having that bit of balance as well. I mean, it's better having a packaged sandwich than a bag of crisps and a chocolate bar, isn't it? So it's just about using common sense.
I think that's something that when we do look at like some of the scientific data, is what we do see is that people simply aren't eating enough whole foods. They're not eating enough fiber. Like the fiber is about 15 grams under on average on the average person. And I think it's only about 20 or 25% of people are eating enough fiber. And like, I think it's only, again, a similar number. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's a similar number on fruit and veg. Just people aren't eating enough because it's easy to just go to a shop, grab a sandwich, grab whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the problem we have in modern society, is that, we're just kind of addicted to convenience as opposed to actually looking at fueling our bodies with the right foods. And I think like it's easy. It's certainly easy to just take that easy option as opposed to actually think for 5 minutes, what can I make that's going to be whole food and easy.
It's crazy too, because if we do take the time and like you've released a cookbook, I've noticed recently, which is cool.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do that, but I've never actually got around to it. So it was cool when I seen yours come. I thought that's a great idea. What an excellent idea, because now is the time when people should be experimenting with their cooking and and how they're approaching their nutrition and so on. I mean, now is the best time to develop any skill, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's great that you've done that. And the other thing is, it's really rewarding. Like if you've spent some time and learned to cook a dish and you come up with something in it, even though doesn't look like it's supposed to look in the book and stuff like that, but it's still rewarding. It's still a rewarding experience. You can then sit down and try something that you made yourself, and there's kind of a satisfaction to that, I think.
And once you've cooked it once, that's a recipe for life. All you have to do is cook one thing, you enjoy it, that's it, you've got another recipe for life, and then you create another one. And then before long, like this is what happened with me. Like I think we have 28 recipes in that cookbook. Like a lot of those recipes we kind of learned and made on the day, really, and just had a bit of an experiment and saw it work. Some of them were kind of classics that I've used before in the past, but other ones were just ones that we just kind of experimented with. How can we make this? How can we make this work? How can we make this also high protein? And kind of had a little bit of a play with that. But I think this is something that people can absolutely spend more time with. And it doesn't have to be inconvenient, like bulk cookery of like dishes. Like if you've got a decent sized freezer, you can, it'll take you an hour to make a big portion of food, but if that can last you like 10 weeks in the long run, you've saved more time than you would have done by picking up that sandwich in the shop. You've actually saved time as opposed to spending it. That's the bulk cooking philosophy.
We did a barbecue on Saturday there. And I had some of the meat. Sorry, some of the meat for breakfast. This morning. It's funny, like we always joked about it in the gym, like, but it's funny. Sometimes I can always talk about nutrition and eat meat without any issue around you, but in some cases, I definitely know some people that even mention eating meat around them, and it's like you're into a massive war there right away. And I don't think it helps the vegan movement much to kind of jump on the high ground as such, moral high ground, you know what I mean?
I think there's going to be a lot of kind of different opinions on this, and I think with the way I am, with my kind of how I respond to it, I'll probably get a lot of people kind of not appreciating it, especially from kind of the vegan community. But in my opinion, I don't think it. If say you park your car in front of my house, and I come out and start screaming at you, what's the last thing you're gonna want to do? You're gonna like almost out of spite, you're gonna want to keep your car there, aren't you? Whereas if I come out and like explain to you in a rational way, I think that you'd be probably a little bit more inclined to kind of, make a decision and actually want to do it. And this is what happened with myself. So with myself, I was vegetarian, and I was speaking to a guy quite often that was vegan. But he kind of just spoke to me kind of about the benefits of it and kind of the ethics about it. And then because of that, I was able to make an informed opinion that I felt like I wasn't guilted into. And then because of that, I could make my own choice. And then because of that, kind of 4 or 5 years later, I'm kind of still sticking with it. And I think as soon as you make someone feel like a dickhead, if you're right or if you're wrong, it doesn't matter, because you've got that feeling of kind of dissatisfaction with regards to what that person said. And the person could tell you the best thing in the world, but if you've kind of got a negative feeling towards them, then you're not going to respond well to it. And I think that's something that we need to take in the vegan community and actually listen to kind of what other people are feeling. And because I know a lot of people that were wanting to go vegan and actually ended up not doing, simply because of the way they were treated by the vegan community. And I think that's a huge problem. I really do think that's a problem within the community. And I think instead of kind of like a lot of the people out there, a lot of the outreachers are doing a really, really good job, because they're able to just kind of explain the facts about the situation and the facts about the cruelty of commercial farming and whatever, without actually kind of bullying people into feeling like they're a bad person, because no one wants to feel like they're a bad person. We all want to feel like we're doing our best, but at the same time, we can't, even if we think something's wrong, we need people to understand that. And I think the best way to create that is to actually make people understand, actually, how do you feel with regards to the ethics? Do you feel okay with this? And if you don't, change your mind and change your approach to it. I mean, if you do feel okay with it, then there's not really anything anyone can say to you that's going to kind of change that opinion.
It's almost like people need to be, if you're trying to get someone to become vegan, for example, or if you're trying to, not even that, just explain the relevance or the importance of it, they almost need to be coached into it, don't they, really? Kind of have to approach it from a coaching, like we approach it probably the best way, because we are coaching on a regular basis. We understand that empathy and understanding is kind of key to getting the message across. If you can't understand somebody's position already, then how the hell can you help them? So I think that's pretty much what's happening, is you got the hardline vegans who like literally won't even listen to anyone's kind of voice in regards to eating meat or whatever, or their current way they do things. Because like you said, because they don't understand their current circumstances, they're never getting the message, never getting through, because the person who's listening doesn't feel like they're getting understood. So, I mean, it's the same in the fitness world. It's almost like ridiculing someone who comes in, who's out of shape and wants to get in shape, but they come into the gym for the first time, and all they get is ridicule and told that they're doing everything wrong. They're not going to come back. They don't want to be there. So, anyways, I don't want to bash the vegan too much, the vegan culture, because I think a lot of people like yourself are approaching it the right way. And like I've actually, some of my friends from a few years back became vegetarian and then vegan, and my sister's vegan, and she cooks a vegan meal once or twice a week for my family back home. Me and myself and Ash, we eat vegetarian meals probably twice a week, I would say, where we don't have any meat at all. Sometimes 3 times a week, just depends on whatever's in the house. So there's definitely some value to it. I think if you look at, you're looking at all the research out there, and like you look at the carcinogenic effect of red meat and so on. Whilst there's some great benefits, I believe, from red meat, there's also some drawbacks from it as well. Especially the quality of meat that we're getting, in our supermarkets and so on.
Absolutely. I think, like I've said this before, like I personally wouldn't switch back because of the ethical reasons, but if I was going to switch back, I don't think I could even like touch store-bought meat because of just the quality and the treatment of animals. I actually did a post a while about discussing like the differences between kind of wild meat and wild farm salmon. Wild salmon and farm salmon, sorry. And the difference was enormous. Like the difference in fat, the difference in vitamins, the difference in color, and kind of antibiotic levels and all that kind of stuff is absolutely crazy. So kind of like, I think it'd be I'd never ever touch anything from a farm again, just because of kind of, well, a factory farm, should I say, just because of kind of the quality of the food you're actually getting is it's so low.
It's weird because it's one of my dreams, one of my kind of end goal, let's say, and I've only got 5 years to achieve it. Well, I set myself up. By the time I'm 35, I want this done. Basically, where I want to be on a sustainable piece of land where I grow most of my own foods. Now, I don't need to grow everything entirely, but where I'd like to grow most of my own food on my own land. I think it's an awesome goal, and I think it's achievable. Just there's a lot of legislation around it. People don't like you getting outside of the box that we belong in. You know, they don't want you not paying council tax and not living off grid. They don't like that shit at all because it doesn't feed into the wider economy. Nobody wants somebody who's self-sustainable. So I did notice there's a huge bias in the legislation around that kind of area because I've been looking into it for a number of years. But yeah, I've noticed that. Well, anyway, tell me about how. Sorry, Jake, go ahead.
I just completely forgot what I was going to say. Completely lost me then.
So, tell me how did you first become vegetarian? Were you always vegetarian? Tell me about that journey to becoming vegan because I've never really asked you this, and I'm quite interested.
So I actually went vegetarian when I was about 13. So I went vegetarian. I might have been 12 or 13. I went vegetarian during that time, and I was vegetarian for about 6 months, and it was for obviously the ethical. My main concern has always been the ethical reasons. It's never really been for the health benefits of kind of vegetarianism, veganism, or whatever. It's always been about how I feel about animals and how I feel about animal agriculture, and I kind of have a little bit of an empathy towards that. So I did that originally when I was about 12 or 13. Did it wrong. Did it very, very wrong. Did it almost unhealthily. A lot of kind of processed foods. And didn't really do it right. I think I gained a little bit of weight, kind of became I might have been even, I can't remember exactly the time, but yeah, got a little bit kind of unhealthy from it. And partly to do with being a little bit less active and kind of reducing kind of my energy or whatever. But yeah, did it wrong, didn't do it kind of right. And then I decided to do it again. I decided to do it for a New Year's resolution because I'd been thinking about it for a while. I think this was about 5 years ago or something around that. I've been doing it for a while where I've been feeling, every time I'd eaten meat, I'd feel kind of guilty about doing so, just because it's kind of my personal ethics that I feel like anyone who's in the same situation as me should absolutely be vegetarian or vegan. And this is, if you don't feel like you could kill an animal, I don't think you should eat it. I don't think you should pay someone else for it. So I always had I couldn't even kill a fly or anything. I've never had that, never been able to do that. Like if there's a fly in the room or anything, I'll put a glass over it, and I've done that ever since I've been a kid. But I'd look at like a field or something, and I couldn't kill any of those animals, but then I'd go out and eat steak. And I feel like this kind of, I started to feel this a little bit more, started to be aware of this a little bit more. And I was like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So come New Year, I'm going to go vegetarian and I'm going to stick with it. And I did, and it was really difficult. Like the first couple of weeks of going vegetarian, I don't know what it was really, really difficult. And then kind of when I went vegan, it was easy. Like I think I was vegetarian for 3 months, and then I switched to a vegan diet, and I was like, this is so easy. Like I couldn't believe like how hard it was for me to go vegetarian. And then after that, all I had to do was phase out cheese and eggs and maybe a couple of other things. And then it was like, this is pretty easy. So I actually found phasing out meat a lot harder.
The jump from eating meat to not eating meat was harder than the jump from vegetarian to vegan, where you cut out all the animal products.
Yeah, absolutely. And with veganism, again, it was the same. It was, I'm going to try a week of going vegan and see how my body responds to it and see if I can do it. And I did a week of it, and I was like, I'll do 2 weeks. And then after that, it was just kind of like, I can do this. And even in the 5 years since I've been, the 5 years since transitioning, everything's kind of become very easy. Like the rise of vegan products and the rise of the availability of vegan foods, the rise of even the rise of knowledge and the rise of education around veganism and actually creating a healthy vegan diet is so much higher than it was 4 or 5 years ago, when it felt like, I think it was probably the start when it just started kicking off. And then everything has kind of changed. Now you go into the supermarket now and you can just pick up anything. Like you go into the frozen section, or you go into whatever. There's vegan products, there's vegan everything. There's websites dedicated just for things that are accidentally vegan, and it's just so effortless to actually do it. It is really, really easy. And I think this is something that's kind of, I think because I did it then when it was a little bit harder, and it was still easier than the people that did it 10, 15 years ago. But because I did it then, it's super easy now because there's so many alternatives and there's so many different kind of, if you do want to have a takeaway or something, there's so much available. And I kind of feel like a few more people should try vegan restaurants, because I think people don't realize how good the food actually is and how similar to meat a lot of the things taste, which is kind of freaky. Like sometimes I remember trying something once and I was like, this is meat. There's no way this isn't meat. And then you find out, obviously, I can't remember what it's made from.
That's the one thing that I don't get. So me and Dan were talking about this one other day. Why is it that if you're vegan, right, you don't want to eat meat? Now, don't take this as a criticism as anything. It's just purely curiosity. If you don't want to, you don't want to eat meat, why do they have meat replicating products? That bit I can't get my head around.
So the reason we don't, there's the reason, like, I used to really like the taste of meat. Like, there was no way. Like, if you put like meat in front of me, back before I was vegan, I'd always choose the meat option, like every time.
Yeah.
So I like the taste of meat. What I don't like is the ethical associations of meat.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like the fact that something's kind of been killed or been whatever for that meat. But the actual meat itself, like, if I could disassociate from it being an animal, that, you know what I mean? I'd happily eat it, but
right.
I can't.
That's right. That actually explains the answer pretty well. I guess I assumed that the term vegan meant that you stopped liking meat, or you stopped wanting to eat it. Obviously you stopped wanting to eat it for ethical reasons, but actually for taste reasons and so on as well, for enjoyment of food. That pretty much explains it. That's interesting.
I think it's quite a common concern. Oh, if you don't like meat, if you don't want to eat meat, why do you not want to eat meat? But yeah, it's like I say, it is that entirely kind of ethical reason, and it's kind of like, you know, you maybe you'd like to do something, but you know those ethical concerns are the reason why you're not. Like, I guess it's the same reason as people that don't want to buy. It's a massive different comparison, but say you don't want to buy from Amazon Prime, but you want, you know, a phone charger. You know, you'd still get a phone charger, but you won't get it from Amazon Prime.
Yeah. I just found out, so I don't know if this is true or not. Do Amazon get funding from local governments to do Amazon Prime?
I don't know.
I've heard that. No, I don't know how true it is because I've not researched it. I don't have time, but not that I don't have time. I'm not that interested in it.
I mean, it's a big company. They've got a lot of money, so I imagine the government's got some sort of vested interest in them. I think definitely
it's like, apparently they subsidise this next day delivery because it's become a bit of a public utility as such, rather than a purely private company. And it's kind of, it baffles me because Facebook's kind of turning the same way, isn't it? It's almost becoming a public utility. It's becoming part of the social structure as such, more so than just a private company providing a service, you know? Like everything, if you think of the amount of things, what would happen if Facebook shut tomorrow? Like, we'd all be lost. We don't know what to do. You know what I mean?
I love the idea of getting away from actually marketing via kind of Facebook and everything. Like, the amount of time I have to spend actually spending on social media to do businesses. I'm sick of it. Like, I wish I could find another way to market, but I think it's the best way to do it, isn't it? Like, you can target so many people, but the amount of time I actually have to spend, you know, in front of a screen, as opposed to like time that I could be spending coaching or spending, you know, working one-on-one with people. I'd much rather be spending that time I spend on Facebook just working with people one-to-one.
That's true. Like, I always think to myself, what would be great if I just had somebody follow me around and like getting the best bits of the day.
Yeah.
that would be great. Like, just pay somebody full time to follow me around, so I don't have to hold the phone or, you know, make an effort to talk to an audience or something. Because I find that really disconcerting. Like, you're talking to a phone. There's no audience. There's no feedback for you to gauge how your message is being received. no instant feedback as such. All the feedback comes afterwards, and then it's all done through it's a pretty alien process for us humans, really, because it's not been around for a long time. So this whole process of marketing this way is totally, I mean, I've never experienced TV adverts. I imagine TV adverts is kind of the same, but I've never done that stuff, so I wouldn't know.
I feel like we're in a generation where we have to spend more and more time than we ever have before, kind of on a computer or whatever. Like, I don't remember ever seeing like a billion adverts or having to, like, the amount of people that you see that post like 3, 4, 5 times a day. Like, no one was ever doing that in the past. Like, it seems to be a lot. Like, so it's a great way to kind of to engage with people, but obviously, like, with how Facebook algorithms work, how Instagram algorithm works, and all that kind of stuff, like, yeah, you literally have to spend so much time on there just to simply, have people actually see your posts. And I think, obviously, with Facebook looking towards more monetization, couldn't say that long, then of adverts and everything, like, they've made it so like personal pages, the business pages is so difficult to actually get any interaction from. I think it's 1% or 3 or 4% that actually of people that actually see your Facebook posts, which is kind of annoying when you spend a couple of years building up a page to then go, oh no, yeah, you got to pay if you want anyone on your page to see it.
Pretty much, like my page, the Titan page used to pick up, and it didn't have anywhere near as many followers. It had half the followers, but the impact of the videos and posts that I used to put up, 3+ years ago was great. When I was doing my masters, I stuck a post up, and by the time I looked at it again at lunchtime, I had 30 comments on it. And there was great interaction and great discussions being had. And now, if I do it, I'll be lucky if I get 1 or 2. I really,
Yeah.
and they're better posts. I've not gotten worse at marketing. Like, I've gotten better. They're more interesting posts. They're worded better. They're laid out better. Like, I've spent thousands in that time frame. I've spent thousands on marketing courses. So it's not that I've gotten worse. I know I haven't gotten worse. It's just that people just aren't seeing it. There's nobody seeing it. So I started using my personal page, and now, like, my personal page has more impact and there's more engagement. Like, when I put something on my personal page that's not shared as a straight post, I'll get like 30 odd comments again, and it's like, why bother having the page? The page is redundant. It's almost redundant. There's no point to it anymore.
Yeah, mine's exactly the same. So all my stuff goes through my personal page now, and I find that there's just so much more people are actually seeing my content, as opposed to when I'll post the same post on my personal page and my figure page, my business page. The business page will get 1 like from my mum, and then I'll get a load of comments on the Facebook page, on the Facebook profile. So it's kind of like, why would I even bother with the business page when I can get people to see my content on my personal page? You know what I mean? It's kind of doesn't make sense.
That's right. That's exactly it. And even the groups. I remember whenever you first created a group, you'd post something or you'd add something to the group, and Facebook would notify everybody that had been added. Like, and then you'd pop up on their phone or whatever, and everybody would see it. Now they don't do that. Now they have, like, they still do it in some cases, but I think you have to turn it on. So you have to each individual has to go in and actively turn that on. And I can understand why, because people are probably getting pestered, with business stuff. It became very much a marketing tool.
I think as well, when you've got kind of, because everyone's doing it now, everyone has a group, everyone, like, in the past you'd get 1 notification, now you get 150 a day if you don't turn it off. So it's kind of like, because it's so saturated and so many people are doing it, like, it's almost like, even if there was 150, no one would be seeing your stuff anyway, because they'd just be full of notifications. And I think because obviously Facebook is an advertising platform, they want you to stay on longer. And if you get annoyed by the millions of notifications you're getting from random groups, you're going to just switch your phone off or come off Facebook or whatever. And I think obviously because they are a business, they want people to see the stuff they want to see, and they want to spend more time kind of on Facebook, don't they? So it's it's definitely a little bit of a tricky situation to be in with regards to kind of the social media aspect of it now. Some people seem to be able to do it really, really well, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of effort goes into just actually spending that time on the media.
There is a lot of time and effort goes into it. Like, I think I mean, if you're not spending 20 hours a week marketing on social media, forget about it. Like
I mean,
between planning
time for that will
posts
put in
and
a lot of
posting
money, isn't it?
and engaging with people that have commented and liked and so on, if you're not at least doing 20 hours a week, you're falling behind the rest of the curve.
And then they
Whatever.
penalise you for that as well. You take a week off, and then that's it. Your engagements kind of drops again, and it's kind of that ongoing cycle of keeping you hooked. And I guess we're probably people that are trying to hook on there as well. Like they're probably, in a way, they're probably trying to target the businesses and people to actually hit them with more adverts as well. But I find it very difficult with Facebook advertising because they'll just bombard you and bombard you and bombard you. Say you're looking at a T-shirt you want, you're like, I can't afford that, and then they'll bombard you 100. You'll see it 100 times, and then on the 100th time, when you're feeling like you're in a little bit of a shitty mood or whatever, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna buy that, make myself feel better. And that's kind of the basis of the whole system, isn't it? They'll just go, yeah.
Yeah, I seen a good post there recently off my previous coaches, business coaches that is, and he said basically people don't see, if they when they see your first post, like 5% buy on the first post or 2%. I can't remember what the actual figure was, but it was ridiculous. And it basically was showing how many people, what percentage of people would buy, given how many posts they'd seen of yours in succession. And it basically it didn't get decent until 8. So like they won't be interested until they see 8 decent posts from you. So if you've been posting, like consistently to the same audience, which is really hard to do. The only way to do that now is through an ad campaign, a Facebook advert campaign. That's the only way to achieve that same outcome now. Which means, whereas before, from the page, like I was mentioning, you could just do that. At any time you posted, most of the people on your page would see it. They get a notification that you've done a video or you've done something. There's a post, so that basically you were able to hit the same people 8 times in a row or 10 times in a row, no problem. Now it's impossible to do that through Facebook unless you're paying for the adverts, unless you're paying for running ad campaigns. Which, I mean, it is what it is. It's just part of the thing. It's an added cost we have to factor into the business now. But I want to come off that anyway. What about, because we could go on all day ranting and raving about that, but what about your training background, your training history, and maybe a little bit of your educational history as well? Could you run through that, and then also what you're doing now, what your next move is?
So originally, I've always been into fitness, always been into kind of training, even from like a very young age. Kind of the first fitness goal I had was actually, it was a really kind of this really aesthetic one. It's kind of one I've kind of come away from now. But the first goal I ever had, I think I was about, again, very young. My first goal was to get a six pack. That's the goal. Just get a six pack.
Isn't everybody's?
Yeah. So it was kind of just like, so it kind of culminated in being, by the end of it, I was doing like 1,000 different variations of a sit up every day. And like, it was just insane. Like I used to be just waking up with just stomach pain all the time from like the DOMs in my abs. And it kind of developed from there. And it was like, right, from there, I'm going to start running, got into running, lifting a little bit of weights in the gym, like your standard bodybuilding bro exercises and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, it kind of went into trying to train boxing and whatever. Then from there, it went to spending a lot of time rock climbing and bouldering. So that was kind of a big part of what I was doing. Then got into CrossFit for a bit, and then found Olympic weightlifting. And from Olympic weightlifting, I was kind of like, this is something I enjoy, something I want to continue with, and focused on that. So I've been focusing on that. Kind of got all my British weightlifting qualifications, S&C, obviously like the PT and stuff. But my actual academic background was in fire engineering. So I actually kind of came from a science background, and the intention of that was to either work in fire engineering or work in fire service. And yeah, moved when I finished university, moved to Birmingham to be a firefighter, and kind of had the biggest failure of my entire life, and dropped out after about 4 weeks of training. So kind of from there, I was kind of in a little bit of a position where like, what do I actually want to do with my life?
What happened that you dropped out? Like, why the drop?
I was suffering at the time, kind of a lot of anxiety, a lot of kind of like that kind of stuff. I found it very, very difficult to. It was kind of like I was fit enough. I was kind of had all the energy and whatever, but at the same time, like when stuff was asked of me, like I just couldn't think. So like my brain just wouldn't work. So for example, we'd be doing drills, and it'd be like something really, really, really simple, but I just couldn't. Almost didn't have the like the thoughts in my head to actually be able to do what I needed to do. And it was kind of a really, really stressful experience because, for 5 years of my life, I wanted to do that, and then got there and just couldn't kind of work at the time. It didn't help that it kind of was the first time away from home, moving all the way to Birmingham, and kind of being in that situation was very, very difficult for me. But yeah, it made it just like it was a huge kind of shock to just kind of not be able to do what I know I can do. And then kind of, it just kind of went from there, really. And then kind of leaving there, it was kind of in a situation of what am I actually going to do with my life? And then kind of went from there and kind of went into the fitness industry. And worked through that, really. Started going through there. And on a master's starting this year. So starting my master's in sports rehabilitation. Hopefully going to be kind of pushing through that and getting into helping people with a little bit more injuries, kind of a little bit more physio style work, and hopefully getting that kind of working with a few more athletes and kind of using the knowledge I've got to, help people to progress. Because I think a thing that we have this kind of performance mindset, especially within the fitness industry or the sport industry at the moment. And I think a lot of the time that performance mindset comes obviously at the effect of potential injuries, and we see a lot of people not getting to where they need to be getting because of picking up injuries along the way that they could have very easily avoided or could have very easily not made worse. And I think that every time that we have a mindset of avoidance of injury and then performance second, instead of progressing like this, we can actually progress gradually and easily, and we can just keep performing and keep improving performance. And it's something that I definitely struggle for myself because I kind of have this mindset of I want to be better all the time. And sometimes I think it's very important for people to just kind of take that step back and actually work on actually improving gradually over time. And I think as well, like this, we have this kind of one rep max, especially in weightlifting, especially in powerlifting, we have this kind of one rep max mindset where we have to kind of hit maximum efforts all the time. And in order to just stroke our own ego and know that we're progressing, like we can't just do like 75% work and just realize that our technique's progressing and everything. We have to be like,
it's almost like a self, what's the word? Like a self-doubt in a way. Because, you're like, I don't know if I'm progressing, so I'm going to test it and find out. It's like, what's the word? An insecurity. We have an insecurity.
Definitely. I think we do have I think a lot of it is as well, like we want to know that the program's working. Like I think we're like, I've done a week on this program, but I don't want to do like 12 weeks on it if it's going to be rubbish. So I just want to make sure it's working by getting a 20 kilo PB. And I think as well, Instagram doesn't help because we see all these people that are absolutely kind of juiced up out of their eyeballs, PBing every week. And then we're like, well, he can do it. So like, there's nothing different between me and him. And then obviously we can't because we're not. And then and I think a lot of people have that kind of attitude. Because I mean, you just look at some of these kind of powerlifters and some of these weightlifters, and you know that there's something not quite right there, especially with
But even outside of using drugs, I mean, I know that's fucking rife at the minute, but even outside of that, even people who are just genetically, more predisposed to do that sport. I had Chris McBride on here on the second podcast, and like I remember when we first started, I was doing weightlifting for around 2 years or so at the time. And we trained together, and he fucking hit 100 kilo that day, and I was like, it took me like a year to get there. what the fuck? What did you do that for? I just felt shit that day. We were seeing weight and everything. This guy had never done it before in his life, So it's just one of them things. I think you have to realize that you've got what you've got, and you've got to work with that. And wishing that it was different, or wishing that you responded different to training. None of that matters. You can't wish something into existence as such. You've got to work for it. and that
Yeah,
requires
absolutely.
being fucking injury free, which is
I think that is something as well that is kind of underlooked massively within the sport. Like it's always like you always look at kind of like, oh, this person got this progress for this person, so he can do the exact same for me because I think we get a lot of this kind of, especially kind of because of like films like Rocky and all these films in the past that have become kind of like, oh, the underdog can always win. And sometimes like if you're just not physiologically as good as someone, if you've not got the genetics of someone, there's nothing you can really do about that. And I think, if you get two people, and I'm sure you've seen this before, like you put two people on the exact same program or a very similar program,
mm-hmm.
One person will absolutely fly and progress like crazy, and one person, they might only progress very, very slowly. And I think it's something that's overlooked massively in the fact that people don't realize it. People don't realize that actually, I'd say probably what would you say, like 90% of it is your genetics, and then you've got like a little
I
bit
don't know
of
if it goes as far as 90, but I'd say definitely like, I don't know, maybe 60%, I would say. But then I'm probably a part of that's my ego. I'm going to have to self-analyze here. And I think that like part of that's my mindset going, no, I think I can do it. That's the ego inside. And it's definitely, I'm going to tell everybody that I can't say anything different because my ego probably won't even allow me to. But that's probably not accurate. So it's definitely, it's far more prevalent than you think. And I think as well, sometimes you need to do something else. So like with Olympic weightlifting, my experience with Olympic weightlifting was I just didn't spend enough time on flexibility. Now, I have a pretty strong feeling that I'm going to put to the test after maybe 6 months or a year of doing yoga every day and increasing my flexibility. I am firmly under the belief that with the right type of other foundational training and flexibility, it was always around my shoulder joints. Obviously, I had multiple injuries in both shoulders, which was a massive factor in me increasing my jerk and my snatch and so on. I think that if I train now flexibility for a year, and I'm not even into weightlifting that much anymore, but if I go back and do a couple of months of weightlifting again, I'll be back beating my old numbers because I've dealt with the problem. The thing that was, you have to be honest with yourself about where you're at and deal with the problem that is in front of you rather than what you want it to be. Like if you want to just keep getting stronger, then sometimes that means getting more flexible. Sometimes that means building up enough endurance so you can do more sets and build some muscle mass. Sometimes that means eating more food and gaining some weight and maybe gaining a little bit of fat that you don't want to do. Sometimes, it means getting more sleep. It means fucking eating better foods, whatever that might mean for you. And I think a lot of people aren't facing the problem and weightlifting, aren't looking at the problem that's right in front of them. They pick the problem that they want to fix, which is just get stronger, lift all the time, rather than the problem that they need to fix.
I mean, if you look at kind of the few different theories of thought on it, and I tend to believe the theory of thought of the people that are most using it. Now, I think Juggernaut, they did an article talking about Mark Rippleto, because he obviously comes predominantly from powerlifting background, and he was basically saying if you can't clean a high number, you need to be able. This is what Mark Rippleto was saying. If you can't clean a certain number, then you need to deadlift more. And it's kind of like, and Juggernaut were basically saying that if you can, I think the number they were saying was Chad's. I think Chad Wesley Smith could clean like 190, but he could deadlift like 800 or 850. He's like, if you can deadlift 850 and you can only clean, 850 pounds, which I don't know what that is, and then kilos, I think that was like 400. If you can do that, but you can only clean that, you don't need to get better at deadlifting. You just suck at cleans. Like even if you got those huge numbers, if you're that strong, you don't need to get any stronger. You just need to be better technically at cleaning or better technically at snatching or whatever. And there's kind of like there is a correlation between strength and Olympic lifting performance, but at the same time, it's such a complex movement. There's so many different things that we need to consider. We need to consider, strength and ability. And all the
variables. There's far more variables than something like powerlifting. And I'm hoping to talk to Ryan and Bobby on this. And Bobby, having been elite level at both, I think it'll be an interesting conversation to have with her. She actually did her master's on it, which I hope she sent me her thesis. I still haven't read her bloody thesis. I must do that.
Kind of got away, didn't it? I think we were talking about her doing one at Titan, weren't we? And I was interested to see what that was going to happen. But then obviously coronavirus happened, and we never got to see that really.
Yeah, we talked right before this all happened, and she was talking about doing a study here, which would have been great. But I think, like, I do think that it's there's so much more complexity to it, and you really do have to. I mean, for example, the reason Bobby stopped Olympic weightlifting was chronic tightness in her erector spinae group. And we've talked at length about that, and I had the exact same issue myself when I was around 19 in mixed martial arts. I ended up with a serious back injury, but the reason that, if I had looked at my flexibility and my mobility, and not just that, but the tension that I was carrying, the amount of tension that I had in the body then, if I had started to resolve that then, none of these things would have happened. And possibly Bobby could have prevented that huge back injury herself had she maybe eased off the barbell a bit and gone to do some other stuff. And maybe, sometimes more isn't more. Sometimes more doesn't achieve better. Sometimes less is better. And that's kind of what you're talking about there, with having a more steady approach to things, and solving the problems as they come up, rather than pushing through it and then finding out that something's gone in your body, and you've got mechanical failure.
I think it certainly is easy to fall into that into that trap of, if I'm not progressing, I just need to do more. I need to do more. I need to do more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of what a lot of people are doing. Like, if you're not progressing, what do I need to do? Like, you'd think about it with other things, and it makes sense. If you fail in your classes, you'd study more, and if you're doing kind of anything else, you'd do more. But with kind of the human body, where we simply don't have the recovery capabilities to continue to keep doing more and more and more, we have to accept that there's only so much that the human body can do. And if we can work on, those things that we can, then we'll do well. It's like, I think when we look at kind of progressive overload, like we look at kind of that idea of constantly getting more and more intense and intense and intense. But if we did that every day forever, like it wouldn't, because without, no dealer, no actual approach to it.
Exactly. I mean, I base it on this idea of lateral thinking. So we're very longitudinal in our thinking. We it's straightforward and straight back and straight lines. But I'm going to try and draw a picture with my hands here. So, like, imagine you've got a guy digging a tunnel down. This is a tunnel here in the middle, and he's digging down here. But there's fuck all down there. On either side of this tunnel, there's diamonds. So outside of this tunnel, there's diamonds, but he's not digging that way. He's digging down. So all he's getting is more dirt. And all he had to do is maybe take a side step, and he's fucking fine. And I think that in our training, and both in our training and in our mindset approach, and a coaching approach altogether, if you just think a little bit differently, maybe just frame as I say, like we talked about even before this podcast, I could always do like a squatcher. The problem is that I had to really internally rotate my shoulders to get into that position. So I would do it because I could do it, and I could squat jerk more and more weight as I was getting stronger, but I was getting stronger in a bad position. So what's the fucking point? And that was ego at the time. And a little bit of ego and probably a little bit of lack of understanding as well. But looking back at it now, I would never approach it the same way again. I would always go back, and if there was a diamond there to have at that site, if I had just worked at moving laterally and saying, well, rather than increasing the weight this week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep my shoulders more extended and rotated throughout the movement, and I'm going to do that for all 10-20 sets of what I'm doing, and do that over the couple of weeks, and then maybe a different thing again, maybe another lateral step might be to add in extra stretches after my training, and so on and so forth. Again, my problem was flexibility, so I'm using that as an example. But it goes the same for anybody in most things. I think you do have to think laterally.
I think it is very difficult to actually think laterally, especially in the moment. And I think you do need to have kind of a setback, and you need to have some sort of issue or some sort of injury in order to actually make you think, actually, I'm not invincible.
Or a coach.
Yeah. I think it's super difficult not to kind of believe your own hype and believe your own bullshit that you've taught yourself over the years, when you've been pushing yourself, I can do this or whatever. I think it's very difficult to actually take a step back and either have a coach, yeah, or actually take a step back yourself. I think, am I actually doing anything that's going to affect me in the long term? Because I think as soon as you have that first bad injury and it's knocked you out for 6 months, I think that's when you realize actually, progress a little bit slower. And,
I was a really slow learner. It took like 3 major injuries to cop on to this type of lateral thinking. I was a really slow learner, but it helps me teach other people. So it is what it is.
Even for myself now, like it's certainly a lot easier for me to tell someone else to take it easy, and then myself, like if I'm having a session and I miss a couple of lifts, like the first thing I want to do is get that lift again, get it dialed in, and like if someone says just leave it for today, I'll find it very difficult not to let my own ego kind of stop me doing that.
It's funny because you still need the ego. People slag off ego all the time as if it's this really bad thing, but I don't think that it is. I think that for performance, ego is essential. You cannot, especially in a sport like weightlifting, you can't go out there and think I might miss this lift. You can't have uncertainty and doubt like that creep into a sport like that. You have to know for certain that you've got it. And you have to kind of believe you're going to be the best on that platform that day. If you're not doing that from day one, then where are you going to go? What are you going to do? So I do think there's definitely, you need to learn to not completely neglect the ego, but not become a victim of it as well. You have to kind of find that balance of using it when you need it and then switching the fucker off when it's going to do you damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I certainly think that like it can be very damaging if you don't listen to it. Like I mean, there's times when I've trained through pain and when I would have been so much smart to just be like, nah, just leave it today. That's it. You're feeling a bit sore, and then a few days later, you're absolutely fine again. But if you do push yourself that little bit too far, you end up basically ruining 2 months worth of work like that super quick. And I think it's funny because whenever I'm coaching, I'm always kind of super concerned about how people are responding to the training, how people are feeling, and I'll completely change up a session. But sometimes maybe if it was myself, I'm like, well, this is what's programmed for today, so this is what you're doing. And I think that's the benefit of having someone else coaching you and to say like, you're feeling sore, this isn't feeling right today. Just dial it up, change it up, and you'll be absolutely fine in 2 days' time. And you're going to get some benefit from this changed up session anyway. It's not like if you change up a session, you completely, you've ruined everything. It's just.
I used to have this really old, outdated coaching model, but I'm going to share it because it's funny more than anything else. But I used to have this idea of bricks and marshmallows. I had 2 types of clients. I had my bricks and I had my marshmallows. Now the bricks, if you wrote it down on paper, it got done. It didn't fucking matter. Like if it was down on the paper and they had it that was on their program, they done it. It didn't matter. If you set someone a target of hitting 50 kilo that day, then they hit 50 kilo that day, and they didn't leave the gym until they hit that 50 kilo that day. And then you had the marshmallows who basically needed to kick up the arse all the time to do their fucking training. They'd skip sets and whatever. And really the best approach is somewhere in the middle. And I basically, if they were a brick, I would hold them back. And if they were a marshmallow, I would push them forward. But actually, that changes based on, sometimes bricks would act like marshmallows and marshmallows would act like bricks, just depending on any given day's motivation, something that happened to them. Somebody might come in and really pissed off and they normally a marshmallow, but that day they were fucking doing it, So it just depended, and it ended up becoming this really blurry grey area, and there was no real fucking structure to that old coaching model. But it served me for a time, and it got me to learn and progress onto a much better model.
It's an interesting one because people, like I know certain people I coach who definitely coach a lot harder than the way I coach another person. Like some people I know that if I push them at all, they're going to crumble. And at the same time, you need to kind of build up that resilience and build up their attitude towards training, especially if they're quite new to it or if they've got a certain attitude. You can't just throw them in, and even if the thing's better for them, like, if you do this, it's going to get you better results or whatever. But if they're not going to do it correctly, then it's, you need to go for the easier opportunity, even if they do have that little bit more kind of in the tank and available. I think that is something kind of that we do have with a lot of kind of PTs, like especially I remember when I first started as a coach, like my attitude was they're going to get the best workout they've ever had in their life. They're going to go away. They're going to get results in about in a couple of weeks, they're going to smash everything. And then it took me a while to actually realize that it took a few people throwing up as well, actually, until I realized, actually, this isn't the right way to do it, and I completely changed my coaching style. And I think that was just obviously an experience. I didn't know kind of how people's body reacted. And I think this is the problem with kind of, your short-term courses, is that you don't really realize how fit or unfit someone is until you actually get into like the gym setting. Right. Or the gym environment. You don't know how, because you've only ever worked with people that are interested, like if you've done your PT course or whatever, you've only really worked with people that are interested in fitness. So you're working, even if they're like, a power lifter and you're getting them running, they still have some kind of fitness background. They're not just like an office worker that's not done anything in 20 years. So it's kind of, I think it's really important to actually understand the differences in kind of a fit individual and someone that's coming to the gym for the first time, and realizing that you cannot just treat those people the same way, and you have to, ease them in, help with their anxiety, with the confidence and all that kind of stuff before you even kind of start with pushing them. Like, obviously,
I wanted to talk about that, actually. I wanted to kind of ask you about your coaching philosophy, because I've seen you work in the gym, and I've always been fucking really, really happy with how you've done things. Not that it mattered, it was your business, but I always thought it was very good, the way you handled things, the way you handled your clients. I've seen you many a time take people into the office just to have a chat if they needed more of that than the physical session that day. Like, it seemed like a very similar approach to ours. And obviously we talked about it previously. But I want to ask, for the sake of this as well, what kind of is your belief? Do you have a coaching philosophy as such? What is it? How would you describe it?
It's kind of a little bit different depending on each person. Like, my main philosophy and my most important thing is stay injury free. So people need to be kind of staying injury free, and they need to be progressing kind of gradually. So my main focus is if you keep people injury free, then they're going to progress. And then outside of that is also kind of the mental aspect and that side of it, making sure that they're not kind of feeling. Obviously, it's dependent on who you're working with, but I think making sure people aren't feeling overwhelmed, making sure people aren't feeling anxious, making sure that people actually enjoy the training. And that's another aspect of it, is that, I think too many people are seeing the gym as this negative place where
like a chore.
You go and you get results from it, but you don't enjoy it. And actually, like, the actual training itself should be part of the result. Like, if you can get yourself into the gym. And I try to get people to understand like that. Some people, I feel like they have this attitude where they're never really going to fully 100% enjoy it. But I feel like that's where I want to get as many people to as possible, where they can actually come, and it's actually like almost the best part of the day. Like, you come into the gym, and I think as well, just like humor, having some humor and having it so people are actually having a laugh and enjoying themselves, as opposed to kind of going somewhere where it's super serious or it's super kind of performance orientated or whatever, or results orientated. Like, the results are going to come with the correct training program and everything. And it's just making sure that people are kind of following that and kind of,
what do you find the biggest battle is in regards to coaching people? Is it the mental battle? Is it a physical one? What's the biggest kind of battle in regards to that?
It's what they do outside of the sessions a lot of the time. Kind of like everything is always pretty good in the sessions. Like, we very rarely have anything go wrong. Like, occasionally, like, people come and they're in a little bit of a, they're not in the best mood or whatever, they're feeling a bit upset or whatever. But usually I find that the session itself, people, they feel better for doing it. Like, they have that endorphin rush. They actually feel like they've achieved something. And I think that's the great thing about training. But I think the other 23 hours of the day are always going to be the hardest, like controlling everything else, controlling stress outside of that, controlling, your food intake as a direct result because of stress eating, whatever. And I think, the hardest part is kind of actually getting people to tell you how they're feeling and actually respond and be honest as well. Like, be honest with why they're feeling like they are and why they're feeling like maybe they're reacting to certain things the way they are. So, for example, if they are stress eating, if they are doing something else, or any of that kind of stuff. And then on the other side of it, like, I find that the physical side, like I was saying, is very, very easy. Like, if they can get themselves motivated enough to go and do the training session, or if they can follow a routine, it's usually kind of that's the easy bit. especially kind of and obviously with some people it's a lot easier than it is with others. Some people you can really get into to anything like you were saying before, anything you write down they'll do it, and then other people obviously like even to get them to go in is a challenge. But I think the main thing we work on is being better each week. So if the first week you start, you only do one session, you eat an apple that week, and that's the only thing you've eaten. The next week you're eating 2 apples, and you're kind of reducing that, and it's just a gradual progress, and it's a progression and not perfection. I think as soon as anyone chases perfection, it always ends up, unless you've got like that ultra mindset, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to actually achieve perfection. There's always something we can do that's a little bit better.
I mean, one of the things, I mean, we started to go pretty deep into the mindset stuff in the last year or so. And it was just a natural progression of coaching, because I found that that's where the biggest limiting factors were hiding. It was never people's physical ability. I mean, physically, if you could get inside their heads and think for them, physically they could do the stuff. They'd probably done it previously. It's just, you know, the overall mentality and so on. And you mentioned, I've jumped a lot in regards to, I used to just say you should just do the fucking training, and that was my old mindset of just do the training that's set. Doesn't matter how you feel. Your training doesn't care how you feel. You know, the barbell doesn't care what your feelings are on that day. And you know, whilst that's true, and it worked okay for me. I'm not going to lie. It doesn't work for everyone. And actually, for myself, even coming off that and coming to this point where I'm becoming a bit more self-aware of my training process, and also helping others do the same. And I think that's what, more than anything, I'm trying to do myself out of a job now. So I'm trying to almost make them so self-reliant, and give them as much skills as they need mentally to cope with the outside stresses and so on. Because that's something that, I mean, we've even worked at that, trying to teach people how to deal with stress outside of the gym and how that might factor into their training as well. But it's just a natural progression, and I was wondering how much of that you've kind of found yourself doing as well. I know I've seen you do it a couple of times. Where do you find yourself kind of naturally progressing into almost, I hate to use this term, but life coaching, teaching people how to deal with stress and so on, deal with anxiety and things like that? Does that happen much?
Yeah, it does. It does happen a little bit. Like I say, it's not something that is like a specialty of mine by any means, but it's something that I kind of can understand with people, and kind of, if I do see kind of those kind of feelings being expressed, then I kind of do a little bit of kind of the coaching on that side of it as well. And I feel like, for me, like I kind of feel like the training does some of that work for you. Like if you can get people into, I think routine is like a huge factor and a huge thing that people need to consider. If you can actually create a routine, I think you'll find that like a lot of people will be a lot happier because of it. Like just getting into that state of a routine. On this day I do this, and this day I do this, and it's kind of that little bit, you're not kind of as disorganized and crazy, and you feel like, oh, I'm not doing anything in my life, or whatever. Like if you've got that routine, like you're almost working towards something. And I think that most people need to be working towards a goal, or working towards kind of something, be that academic, be that athletic, or be that kind of work or whatever. They need to be kind of feeling like they're progressing with their life in some kind of a way. And I feel like that's the kind of approach that I like to kind of take with people, is just making sure that they are kind of able to progress a little bit with the emotional side of things. And I think as well, like especially with regards to nutrition, like that is where the emotions play a massive factor. You know, if you're someone that's prone to stress eating, or if you're someone that's prone to comfort eating, then that's something that you need to really consider, and need to find almost the underlying causes, and actually address some behavioral strategies that's going to help you kind of to deal with that, as opposed to just being in a situation where you are going to just let those emotions run wild, really.
Yeah, that's pretty much where my kind of delving into the mindset stuff started, both in the training, because people will come in and just wouldn't be in the mood for training, for example, and they just put in shitty sessions. But you know, it ended up where I would get good at pep talks. So like 5-minute pep talk, and boom, they were fucking star athletes again. You know, I developed quite a knack for that. But what I realized is that they would keep coming back with that same shitty attitude, and then I try to figure out. It's almost like a natural progression of problem solving. So you find out that there's something else outside that's causing all this negativity, and then you say, well, what about looking at that situation differently, and one thing to another, for example. But the nutrition was definitely somewhere where that became really obvious, because people were coming in saying, no, I've stuck with my calorie limits this week and stuff like that, and you're like, no, you fucking haven't. You're like 2 pound over again, 3 pound over again this week, and there's they're almost lying to themselves. Like, they don't even notice that they're having some of the foods. It's so subconscious. The habit's so subconscious. They didn't know that they were not picking in the fridge.
Tell you what, though, I think it'd be very interesting if someone else tracks your food for the day, and you're like, and then you got told, right, you've got to explain what you've actually eaten today. And I don't think many people will be able to actually say, hey, this, and this, and this, and this. I reckon everyone will miss something.
Oh yeah,
that'd be a really interesting study, actually, to see actually what people are actually eating.
Yeah, I used to always, as a mandatory thing, if you wanted to work with me, it was they had to do a full week's food diary, and if they couldn't do that, there was just no point, because that couldn't help them. So I just needed to know what they're eating. It wasn't so much about the food; it wasn't about the nutrition. Not that I'm a nutritionist, I'm not. It was just simply about, could they sustain the discipline it requires to write something down and find out, because if they couldn't even do that, then how could I help them towards your goals? And we know that nutrition is a fairly big part of moving towards your goals, whatever that may be. Even in strength, it's a fairly important factor. So yeah. That was one of my mandatory things I would get people to do, because it kind of shows you where their discipline was at, whether they could manage that or not. And to be honest, even myself, even doing that for myself, writing a week's food diary down, I probably struggle with that myself now. And that's God's honest truth, because I've gotten so into my own routine or habit now of, I kind of know where my balance is at. I know what foods I have a regular meal time and stuff like that. So it would probably feel weird even for myself to do that now. I wouldn't do that for somebody now. I wouldn't ask somebody for that, but I did then, because I was so kind of military minded in that way. I was like, you've got to kind of jump through a few hurdles before I'll even spend time on them. That was the wrong approach, but it was what it was.
It's quite interesting that you mentioned that, actually, because I think it's really important that people become kind of nutritionally aware.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people are kind of, they're either relying on apps to track how much they're eating, and then as soon as they either become so reliant on that they can't live a normal life without it. So they're used to tracking everything. Oh, that's my calories for the day. That's how much I can eat, whatever. That's it, shut down. And then you've got kind of the other people that kind of like, I don't want to do any tracking. I don't want to know anything. But those people are kind of, they're not nutritionally aware, so that they don't know how much protein or how much fat or how much calories are in, the average amount of food. And they can't listen to the hunger cues and the body's natural response to eating. So I think that's something that kind of I try and coach. And one of the things I do is I get people to track for about a day or two, just so then they're aware of what they're actually eating and the common foods that they're eating. So for example, if you're eating all these foods and actually you're eating 1,000, 2,000 calories more than you need to, it just lets you be aware of that. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, it just gives you that little bit of nutritional awareness to what you're actually eating. Because it just becomes natural. Like, you know how much roughly is in a certain food or whatever, and then you go, I can eat that, eat that. That's what I need to do to be losing weight. That's what I need to be gaining weight. That's what I need to maintain. You kind of get into a little bit of it's not 100% accurate, but you kind of get into a little bit of an understanding of what you need to be doing in order to lose weight or gain weight. Like for myself, with this new, with being in lockdown, I decided I'm going to try and lose a little bit of weight. So I've not tracked a single calorie. I've not tracked anything, and I'm down like 8 kilos now from just doing that. That's over the course of 8 weeks now. But like not one single calorie was tracked, but it was just making sure that I'm aware of kind of how my body responds to the food that I'm putting in, and just changing my habits. Just stopping. If I like it in the past when I was working on my strength a little bit more, if I was feeling a little bit hungry, I'd just eat. And now I'm not afraid to just be that little bit hungry when it's necessary. And I think kind of people need to kind of think about that a little bit more and actually think about what the body needs to do in order to lose or gain weight or whatever.
I think you're bang on the money there, but I think that type. I mean, I started doing that very early because I mean, I had to cut weight for fights when I was, 18. So I've been cutting weight from a teenager, and I know how to do it. I knew how to gain weight, knew how to lose weight, and the right way to do it, obviously, to keep your energy up and stay as healthy as you can throughout that process. So it was very easy for me to transfer those skills because at the start of track, but I mean, even after a while, I didn't have to track. Even when I was cutting weight for fights, like I didn't need to track at all. I did a little bit of tracking again for a few years whenever I was doing Olympic weightlifting, mainly because I wasn't eating enough. I was really, really struggling to get 5,000 or 6,000 calories in at the time. But yeah, so like now I don't need to do that and like yourself, but would you advise that for people starting out, or would you advise them to maybe track a bit first? And what would you advise if they don't have that experience that we've just had?
Yeah, I think that. Oh, don't know what's going on with it. It's just going a bit crazy tonight. Yeah, I think that it's important to get an understanding of actually, like I like to get people to track a little bit first, just so then they can understand kind of what they're actually eating at the moment and get like a baseline of what needs to be improved. So what I generally do is I say, track this, send me it, and then I'll give you some suggestions on how to improve it. And then from there, it usually changes things quite a lot. And one of the things I find is a lot of people aren't eating enough protein, and a lot of people are eating enough whole foods. And that's basically the thing that I see most, especially with working with people kind of in the vegan community, is that they kind of, I think a lot of people just, they go from eating meat, veg and rice or whatever to then just eating rice and veg, and there's no replacement at all. And I think that is something that happens quite a lot from, what I've looked at. And it's kind of just being aware of what you actually need to be eating and what you need to be focusing on. And then again, just kind of realizing how many calories, how much sugar and everything is in kind of packaged and processed foods and all this kind of stuff, like how low that quality of food is. And then that's the main thing I coach. Get away from doing that, start eating more whole foods, and then just be aware of your intake and how you should feel when you do it. And then when you get into that feeling, it's often a lot easier. Some people I coach, they stay tracking for a long period of time because it's just how they work. Whereas kind of others, they just respond quite well from just actually listening to how their body reacts. And I think a lot of it is kind of, there's no right way for each person. Like some people will always want, like some people's mindset will always want to track and want to be very organized. And some people will want to be like a little bit more disorganized and have that little bit more freedom. And I think it's just finding what people fit into really, and kind of understanding the differences between those people and being able to coach. Like certain people I coach, I don't think they could do it without tracking, because I think they need that research there. But I guess it's different from person to person.
How are you getting on during this whole, pandemic, coronavirus? What's your thoughts on that? Has it impacted your business? Has it impacted your clients? Has it impacted you? And how are you coping with it all? I know you mentioned already you decided to lose some weight, so that's a pretty cool goal that you've done well on. So what side of that? How's it done with your business, first of all?
So it's kind of obviously it's took a hit. Like the business has obviously took a hit because of it. Focusing a lot more kind of on the online stuff at the moment, and working with that. And then I've found that I've got a lot more free time because I'm not actually coaching people in person. So I'm spending kind of time working on kind of individual little projects and stuff like that. Like I say, obviously I've spent a lot of time working on the cookbook lately. So that's been quite a cool little project, working on all those kind of things. So it's just kind of, I think one of the things we need to focus on doing is just keeping our mind occupied during all this, because when you've got an extra so many hours per week where you're not doing anything and you can't go out and you can't spend your time outside or kind of go visiting places or anything, it can become like a very boring existence. So I think for myself personally, it's just trying to stay busy and trying to stay occupied. Quite blessed in the fact that I managed to pick myself up a squat rack before all this kicked off. So I think about 2 days before the lockdown got announced, I was like, they're definitely going to close the gyms down. I'm going to go get myself a squat rack. So I picked myself up a squat rack, and I've got some rubber matting down. So it's kind of good that I can still do a little bit of Olympic lifting outside. Days like today, it's not so fun because obviously I've got to go out and train in the rain. But it is what it is. But it's kind of a little bit of a weird experience, like when you're training and it's pouring down. And sometimes you feel a little bit like, I don't know, you kind of get into like a little bit of a beast mode. You feel like, oh, I'm going to put so much more energy into it, and it's kind of a nice feeling in a way, just like working. And I guess this is kind of goes in line with kind of your mindset stuff, like the Crucible program and things like that, where if you do something that's, you know, that's challenging and physically tough, you can come out of it at the end and you can feel kind of a lot stronger because of it. I know this is only kind of a short-term thing of one training session, but you do come out of it feeling like
that knock-on effect, doesn't it? You do that every week,
absolutely.
It's got that knock-on effect.
And then you get to like a gym that's warm and, you know, got shelter and stuff, or you train on a sunny day, and it's just like you kind of appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So certainly do quite enjoy it when it is a little bit rainy outside. Like it was the other day, I was training outside there and it was pouring down. Felt a little bit dangerous because my hand was slipping off the bar and stuff, but it was kind of it was very accurate with it because obviously my hands
no room for error.
Yeah, no room for error. And to be fair, yeah, it ended up being a decent session because of it. So yeah, I certainly think that having that little bit of difficulty makes it, you can have a good training session because of it directly. There's a direct result of it. I think, yeah, just taking those negatives and turning them into positives. Like I think that's one of the things that a lot of people kind of struggle to do, is if they have a negative experience, they kind of go into a shell or they go into whatever. And I know this is only like a small negative with training, but it kind of applies on the global, on the bigger stage of things.
Yeah.
I think that people kind of are faced with a problem, like they respond in either one of two ways. Like they'll completely melt down or they'll kind of respond to it. And you see it a lot with people, like people that have just come out of relationships or people that have lost a job or something, and they either kind of respond really badly to it and get into a depressive state, or they use it as an opportunity to better themselves. And I think if we can kind of turn negatives into positives, it's definitely a good way to approach things. When we kind of, obviously if we're faced with difficulties, how we react can have a massive ability on how we can recuperate from those things.
I think that's definitely true. There's an excellent book by Ryan Holiday called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and it's one of them. It's actually one of them sayings that sticks in my head quite a lot. And every time, I mean, I don't want to say too much on here because we can't announce too much just yet. But we've taken this whole coronavirus incident as a massive positive, and I know that there's been a lot of people obviously who've suffered, and a lot of families have suffered, and we don't mean in that way. Hopefully it doesn't come across that way, but you know, we could potentially be looking at a lot of growth because of it, both on the online platform and also in person again. Once things reopen, we could look at growth. And I think a lot of people are just kind of battering down the hatches right now. But whenever there's chaos like there is right now, there's also loads of opportunity. So it's just kind of, like as the guy was saying, the obstacle becomes your way. So the obstacle to us running a business here, I mean, gym's closed, the lights are bloody off, for God's sake. So, you know, that's just a trip. Don't worry, we'll fix that eventually. But so you know, that's an obstacle to us running a business. But really, that's actually become the way we're going to run something even better. The obstacle became that pathway. And I think if we look at as many things like that as we can, you know, we can look at our problems or our obstacles in a different light. And it opens so many doors. It's just all about your perception. It's all about how you approach things. More than anything, that's our kind of my coaching philosophy, I guess, is to just try and teach people to look at things differently and look at the opportunities. But yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that is something that a lot of people do lack, and a lot of people kind of struggle with that mindset. And that, I guess, it's a victim mentality of, you know, if something happens to you, you know, you want to play the victim instead of kind of taking the positive, a different opportunity, seeing as a different opportunity instead. And I think it is easy to kind of fall into that pathway. I know I've fallen into that pathway myself in the past, but I think it's just going to be something that you actually actively think about. You know, need to get out of that situation and take something from it that's a positive. You know, if doing it this way wasn't meant to be, then you could find another way to do something. And yeah, it's just kind of taking that different approach and a different way of looking at it, really.
I mean, there is some things that's probably going to happen to you that just are shit, and that just is what it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, loved ones dying and so on. There's nothing good about that. There's nothing ever going to be good about that. But that's just also part of life as well, and you've got to take the knocks. And you just got to be grateful for the time that you did have them. Because I know some people personally who lost people very early on, and it's not. It's even worse then. I mean, it's probably my worst nightmare, really. But yeah, so you do have to. I'm going very deep here altogether, but you do have to just be grateful for the things that you do have as well, as much as possible, and focus on that. Focus on what you can have some control over, rather than worrying about things that you can't have. You don't have any control over. How have your clients, how have your members and so on, how have they found it during this time? Have they been okay?
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's a little bit, some have, some haven't. Some people have struggled a little bit harder than others, and some people have done really, really well. I'm quite lucky to have a client that I always used to train at his home gym. So it's quite lucky for him that he's managed to, nothing's changed. So it's kind of like, it continues, it goes on. And it's a little bit frustrating because with the weightlifting club, we had a few people that were going to be competing. And so there was a few of us going to be competing in June or July, I think it was. And obviously because of that, we're no longer able to do it. And I had a powerlifting guy that was going to be competing as well, and the Cumbrian champs, and obviously he can't compete as well because everything's been shut down. But a lot of things are just kind of training as normal. Quite lucky in the fact that we have kind of quite a lot of training kit. So a lot of that's been rented out to kind of members of the club and all clients and things like that. So it's kind of been quite handy for them to just be able to kind of continue on with the training. Obviously, they don't have the access to kind of the gym and whatever, but they have like a barbell, they have some plates, and they can still kind of get on with things, still get some results. And we're just focusing on different things a little bit more work on kind of what we can do. Like I say, similar to myself, I actually started running for the first time. So running 3 times a week at the moment, which is quite good. I thought it was going to really interfere with my training, but it's actually, I feel really good for it. I don't feel, even though I've lost 8 kilos, I don't feel weaker because of it. I actually feel good for it. So it's kind of
I think that's actually true. Like, I think sometimes we think something's going to have a huge impact or negative impact on our training until you try it. There's a lot to be said for this, this blended approach. Now, how much you blend it will depend on your goals and depend on your own genetics and so on. But CrossFit kind of started something that really needs expanding. I don't think CrossFit's the answer. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of good things to say about CrossFit. So many good things. Also some negatives as well. But there's a lot of positives to take from that approach of blending the training and having, and a focus on everything and having a hybrid approach as such. I would like to take that a step further again. I think they need to go even more so, because all the movements, if you look at what's in CrossFit, is very sagittal playing, frontal playing, not a lot of transverse playing. There's not a lot of variety and exploration of movement there, which I think needs to be advanced. But how then you turn that into they've done a pretty damn good job, in fairness, of making it a sport. Making it something that could be tested one athlete against the other. I mean, how you would test more diverse movements, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something that we're trying to do within our own company, but it's very, very difficult.
I think in a lot of ways it's good, and then in a lot of ways there's obviously the negative aspects of it. Like there's the way how they compare each other. Like it obviously does favor shorter athletes quite a lot, and then obviously they've got the whole kind of all the other issues that they have, and the fact that the quality of movement is often swapped for rep ranges and things like that. Certainly kind of in the local levels and things like that. I think America are doing a really good job of it. Doing a really, really good job of CrossFit. Like they've got like Olympic weightlifting coaches kind of in the clubs and all that kind of stuff. And it's like they're actually having people that are specializing in weightlifting, specializing in gymnastics, specializing in kind of the cardiovascular training and whatever. And I think as we kind of progress and see that progress, I think that'll be a really, really good way to kind of see that forward. I just think as soon as like the Chinese lifters, if any of the Chinese lifters get involved in CrossFit, I think that'll just be the end for
I
American.
give over.
I think as soon as they get involved, or kind of your other countries get involved, I think it's going to be very difficult for America to compete with the likes of.
I definitely think though, like there's a lot of transfer of strength and skill and balance and flexibility. There's a lot of transfer, especially between gymnastics and Olympic weightlifting. Like that Klukov's friend who'd never done any weightlifting before, well, so he said anyway, snatched 100 kilo on day one on his first ever lifting session. And at first I didn't believe that, but actually thinking about it now, I think it's probably not far off the mark, because I've met a guy who's a strongman who accidentally snatched 60 kilos. He didn't really know what he was doing. He just like muscle snatched 60 kilos, So there obviously is those people that have that foundational strength and flexibility that's required for both elements.
Well, when we do look at the sports, like we look at the top level weightlifters, we look at the top level CrossFitters, a lot of them have come from gymnastics. Like a huge amount have come from either gymnastics or track and field, and they're all coming from that high competitive background. Lots of general preparation, training, lots of GPP work, and lots of, obviously, like the fact that they're mobile and so strong is going to transfer so well. But if you look at some of the top, like you look at Sarah Sigmund's daughter, and you look at all kind of your other athletes in CrossFit, a lot of them have come from gymnastics, or they've come from weightlifting in the past, so they have that kind of that baseline flexibility, mobility, strength, and even a lot of the time they have that baseline body type that's kind of so essential to the sport, really.
I think the middle of the park kind of guys usually get the best of it, and height wise, but I think some of the shorter guys, they struggle in the games, at least. And probably not in your local CrossFit box. Shorter guys probably love life, but in the games, if you're short and you're strong, you're good. But if like the middle of the park guys kind of get better off, because you remember that thing a few years back in the games. I mean, I could be talking 5 years back with my memory, but it was the pig. They had to turn that big fridge looking thing over. Remember that? No. And there was actually a British guy from down the road, Stephen Fawcett. He got into the games, and he like really struggled on that event because he was short. He really couldn't get the leverage he needed to push this big pig over. It's basically this big block, and it was like a big, huge fridge freezer type thing, and they had to just keep flipping it. But he could, obviously, taller athletes could push it more from the top, so he had more leverage, whereas he was pushing it from the middle, so it's just not the same leverage at all. So obviously, there's definitely trade-offs to being short as well, but I think that's more happens at the later stages.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens as much in your local affiliate gyms.
I think it's a little bit crazy as well. Like, you have no idea what you're going to be faced with either. Like, you go into the games.
I kind of love that, though. I kind of love that whole kind of unpredictability about it. I like that, being ready for anything. And I think that, I mean, certainly one of the reasons I train is to be ready for anything. I train jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, and just in case I ever get attacked, or ever have to defend myself and my family. And, that I think all men definitely should, because it's really good for your mental health. But even women, I think everybody should do some sort of self-defense. I think it's great. But obviously training outside of that as well. I've spent years developing a decent amount of strength, and now I'm kind of focused more towards flexibility, because I think that's my weak point. So, and I've got good endurance. I've done marathons. So if I ever need to run for a long period of time, I can do that too. If I need to run away, I can run away. I can swim pretty good, although I'm not a technical swimmer. I'm terrible, but I can get in the water and move around. So it's just been ready for anything, and I quite like that idea. I just think I would take that even further again, and just like kind of do a bit more exploration with it, and kind of try to make it a bit more unorthodox. It ended up becoming CrossFit was like either Olympic weightlifting with a bit of conditioning, or you know what I mean. It kind of like ended up with a very one system approach. Olympic weightlifting became hugely important in CrossFit a few years ago. It became kind of one of the most noticeable things where people were either losing or winning on, and then just everybody became Olympic weightlifting, which I think is probably the right, because it takes so long to get good at it. it's probably not a bad idea. Like if you want to be a CrossFitter, most of your time should be dedicated to doing the Olympic lifts.
Well, I've had a few conversations with people in the past, and I think like if you want to become a really good CrossFitter, I think you should spend time at the start before you even start doing any workouts, before you start doing any WODs. Just get your baseline strength up. Like really work on getting a good squat, getting a good deadlift up pull, getting your Olympic lifts learned, learning technical aspects of it before you start. And I think like when I was CrossFitting, this was the mistake I made, was I wanted to be able to do everything. And I think if I'd spent, when I was doing it, spent a year or so, 2 years, just really.
You need to phase it, don't you? The CrossFit, you need to have a longer term goal in mind. There's so much to it. I don't know how we got on to CrossFit so much, but there's so much in CrossFit that you've got to phase it on a structured plan to get to where you want to be in regards to performance. And because there's so many things in it, you probably, like you said, maybe do the first year of just maybe the odd kind of conditioning on your rest days, but mostly focus on developing that strength and flexibility. Because personally, I find that's like, they're the things, not even personally, but anatomically and physiologically, they're the things that take a longer time to generate.
Yeah.
You can get pretty fit in a couple of months. I mean, if you train hard for 3 or 4 months, or even, well, maybe not 3, but 4 or 5 months, let's say, you can enter a marathon and run it. And there's been plenty of, examples of people doing that. People have probably done it in less, so it can be done. And you can develop a good endurance pretty quickly. I think we're naturally kind of built to survive through endurance as humans, but we're not as naturally predisposed to gaining that strength and flexibility, apart from the odd genetic freak.
And I think this is where the programming comes in. Like, I think we really do need to have someone that really knows how to program well if you're going to be taking CrossFit seriously, because there's just so many variables, there's so many things going on. There's so much technique involved in so many different movements as well, that if you have, someone that's not programming it well enough, then you're just going to be deficient in one of the areas, or you're going to get injured. And I think they do have a problem at the moment with load, like with volume. Like the volume is just so high that we see such a high injury rate, especially in kind of novices and things like that. That's, I think, something that needs to be addressed a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I'm just getting my delivery in. That's right.
All right.
Just chuck it in the fridge one, please. Thanks, Carl. Thank you. A random entry into the podcast. But no, I think you're right there. I think there are so many variables. I think a lot of people are approaching it from a group perspective as well. And we probably need to approach it more from an individual perspective.
I think that was one of the things we wanted to do with the weightlifting club, was because we found that kind of whenever I was learning weightlifting, it was kind of big classes. And I feel like you can have the best coaches out there, but when you're not receiving kind of one-to-one tuition and one-to-one getting things picked up on every single lift, you can very, very quickly fall into bad habits, or you can very, very quickly let your ego take its control of you, and you can get those, start adding up too much weight too fast and messing up with your technique. And I think that's the thing that we wanted to start with the weightlifting club, was we didn't want to have big classes in. We didn't want to have 20 people learning how to lift at the same time. We wanted to have myself and Alex, 2 coaches, working with 6 people, 1 to 3, and then you can see every single lift, give them every single bit of feedback they need, and then because of that, they can really, really progress. And I feel like, especially things like weightlifting, they need that amount of focus on, especially when people are learning. I think when people are learning weightlifting, it has to be so focused, and so, the technique has to be emphasized so much that I don't think you can really get away with letting people kind of lift on their own until they have at least the basics dialed in. And that was
I agree. We have Caroline who's been been coaching her for 3 years now, and she's only just started to do a lot of the stuff on her own now. But it's taken all them one-to-ones and that time to get her up to this point. So it does take time for sure. Cool. Jake, is there anything you want to add, bud? Or is there anything that you wanted to talk about today or bring on?
I can't remember. I think we've covered a lot, haven't we? We've gone all over the place.
I knew we would, though.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about kind of your flexibility training and what you're looking forward to doing, and can kind of talk about kind of a few different strategies on flexibility and give people kind of something to go away with really, and what they can focus on to kind of improve on it, I reckon.
Cool. Yeah. Nice one. So I think my flexibility. I've always had a decent amount of flexibility in that. I mean, I'd go to a yoga class in one of the gyms I worked at before, and probably be better than the yoga instructor at yoga, which is a bit shocking. And I do think there's a lot of, I hate to say it, but I'm going to probably go on a full frontal attack on a lot of the yoga community in the coming years. So just preparing everybody for that. I know, you know, I know of some fantastic ones as well. Don't get me wrong. I know some amazing yoga teachers as well. I know that Nicole, who's coming on, she's actually a yoga instructor, so she'll be on the next couple of podcasts. That'll be interesting, that discussion. But I feel like a lot of them aren't that good. Like they're really not, like whenever I'm on an app at the minute, or I'm working through this yoga programming. I mean, I believe in looking for external sources and for my training. I mean, for me to turn around and say as a coach, I have all the answers from my own training, or for anybody else's training, then that's, I'm not progressing. I'm not learning. I'm not helping anyone with that approach. So I'm always taking outside influence. I've had Shira work with my movement and my mobility in the past. So basically, what I'm trying to get across is that I'm not, just because I'm a coach doesn't mean I completely coach myself. I only use my own stuff. And to do that would be stupid. So I do, whilst I do my own strength programming and so on, it's something that I'm comfortable with and something I really, really know. I also implement all elements from other places all the time.
I think realistically, everything is derived from something, isn't it? Like everything we do is derived from something that we've seen or something that we've done. I don't think there's many people inventing completely new exercises. If they are, I think like what we have available at the moment is already fantastic. So it's kind of like, if we don't need to invent anything new because we're already getting all this fantastic human movement from, all the movements that we're already doing. And I think it's just like, I think it would be crazy to just be like, yeah, I'm only going to create new movements, or I'm only going to do this, or I'm going to do that. I think everything derives from something, and in order to have a good program, like coaches have to work with each other. Like we can't just be like, oh, I run the something system. And a lot of people are doing that. But the something system is completely different than anyone else's approach in the world. It's entirely my own model. I see that all the time on sponsored adverts and stuff, like, oh, try this. I guess it's kind of like all those old adverts years ago, like this one crazy trick, PTs hate him, and then they tell you like you need to eat some berry from the Amazonian rainforest, and then you lose all that body weight. And then it's kind of like they want this one crazy trick, don't they? And actually, it's actually.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so I mean, whenever we're looking for clients, and I know we've talked about this in the past, we want the ones who've been through all them stupid tricks and not got the results, that they were promised. So, because at that point, then they're ready to do some work and to do something that's going to be worthwhile in long term. But no, for my own flexibility, I've gotten back into yoga. I did yoga after I hurt my back when I was younger, and I realised how good it was and how difficult it was then. Because it was a girl called Keno McGregor I started following at that time, and apparently she's quite famous in the yoga world. I didn't know that then. I just bought this DVD and started doing it. Bought a DVD online as you do, and away you go. And it was just that was the beginner series, and I couldn't do it, and I still can't do it today. So the level of movement, quality, and strength and control that these guys have at beginner level is already more than I can do, which for me was a huge kick in the ego. Like, that was a big kick in the nuts for the ego. And like anything, whenever I find I'm pretty crap at something, which is what got me into Olympic weightlifting when I first started, because I was pretty crap at it. I decided no.
I think that might have been your own terms, though. Like, you're pretty crap at it. I think you're probably better than the average person at it.
No, mate, I couldn't even front squat when I first started. Honestly, this is no joke. I couldn't overhead squat, and I couldn't front squat. I couldn't even overhead squat with a dowel at the time. I was so stiff, and I didn't know that because I could kick people in the head from MMA, but I didn't realize how much of my spine and my trunk was all locked up. And I didn't realize that. Obviously, I realized that because I fucked my back up and ended up like taking a year to come through that injury, at least. It was really 2 years before I got back to full training again. And that was when I got the yoga. That's whenever I seen a good physio who put me on the right track and explained to me the importance of staying injury free, the importance of balancing your training with hard work and easy work and undulating it and so on. You know, and now I've just I'm going full steam ahead with the flexibility because I feel like there's a lot more potential in my body that I haven't accessed. And I think that the thing that stopped me accessing it is the flexibility, not the strength, not the endurance or anything else. I know myself. I haven't run in months, right? I mean, the last time I ran was with the Crucible guys, which was a few months ago. And I know I could go out today and probably do a 13 mile if I push myself, no problem, in a reasonable time. I could definitely do a 10k easy enough. I could probably do more than 13, but I don't know. But anyway, I know that that's kind of always there. I could do 10 rounds on the pads boxing still. I could do 10 rolls jiu-jitsu, although I'd probably die a little bit in the jiu-jitsu because it's quite tough. But, you know, that's always there, that capacity is there. The strength doesn't really deteriorate that fast for me. But flexibility is definitely a problem. So not a problem, but I think it's that key. It's the key to unlocking the most. It's the most reward for the least amount of work in that regard. And it'll also help me stay injury free for longer as well. So I'm doing yoga every single day, 7 days a week, and then I do my own strength training programs on top of that, which doesn't involve a lot of barbell work at the minute. There's a lot of kettlebell, single leg work. Trying to work on pistol squats, for example. Again, strength and flexibility combined. Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of that stuff, Bulgarians and so on. But the big focus is yoga. And I was watching a guy who's an advanced practitioner just this week, and it's just phenomenal. It really, really is. What they're able to do it doesn't look possible. And I think that excites me. That kind of fires me up because I'm like, well, if that looks impossible, I want to do it. It was the same reason that I got excited about weightlifting. I remember watching the Olympics when I first started doing Olympic weightlifting. And I watched the Olympics, and I'd watched the Olympics for years and seen Olympic weightlifting, and it never interested me. And then I tried it, and could struggle with like 40 or 50 kilo, you know, these techniques, and then seeing somebody hit like 200 kilo on a lift, it just blew my mind. I thought, this is phenomenal. This is ridiculous. These people are ridiculously strong and flexible. And then obviously coming through the S&C and how important Olympic lifting became, you know, for the S&C, and how much they intertwine. That was great. So, but now I definitely just doing a lot of yoga. I think that the intention and the breath. I know that's a pretty gimmicky way to say it, but it is what it is. Having the intention while you're stretching is important. So I think a lot of people just stretch. Some people don't bore their arses because it can be boring. But I think that, you know, for example, they talk a lot throughout the yoga practices that they'll be telling you different cues. Like, for example, use a strength thing, because most people who you might be listening to us talking would be into strength. So whenever you squat, for example, you know, you can kind of drive the knees out, externally rotate, that fires up the glutes and it gets you out of the hole in the squat. So like those little cues is all cues that we know as a strength coach to help somebody improve in their squat within a session. And in the same way, yoga does that for me through flexibility, in a flexibility realm. So like they'll be saying, I'll be doing a stretch, but I'll not notice that the outside of my foot isn't reaching for the floor, isn't pushing toward the floor. And that makes all the difference in the sensation. So whenever they tell you to do that, oh geez, that does feel different. You know what I mean? And there is a different element to it, and I've noticed a far faster progress. And it's already carrying over to my strength, because some of my gymnastic movements are just feeling much easier. There's less resistance when I'm doing things like handstand push-ups and pull-ups. I'm not having to fight against my own body, which is nice. It's a nice feeling.
I think another thing as well, it gets overlooked a lot in yoga, is actually just training barefoot and not wearing shoes, and actually developing on the feel and the kind of the physiology of just your foot and being in contact with the floor, actually moving your feet how they should be. Because like something I've been looking up a lot, and it's massive, especially in strength sport, is the fact that, you know, everything starts from the floor, everything starts from the feet. And people have got weak feet, like they can't control the feet. There's so much things that you can't do with the feet. and then because of that, balance is affected down the line, your ability to drive through the floor and all that kind of stuff is massively affected. So I think that just actually spending time balancing and controlling and, actually focusing on being stable in the bottom position of certain movements with bare feet is such a massive underrated tool that, so many people aren't using. And I think it probably is partly to do with the fact that kind of commercial gyms have kind of ruined being able to take your shoes off and train barefoot.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge problem as well, kind of in the fitness industry, that kind of all these commercial gyms are putting all these rules upon what you can do, what you can't do, what you can wear. And I know it's for kind of hygiene and whatever, but I do think it affects massively the way the human body functions, and especially people working in office jobs in kind of those shoes that are cramping the feet into place and things like that. I think it's something that kind of we neglect a lot, especially kind of within. Well, I reckon most people wouldn't even think about their feet and how important the foot is when they even start training.
It's funny because I've lifted in lifters for years and regular shoes, even regular trainers for years, and I felt quite secure. And in a lot of what I'm doing, I'm also on top of the yoga. I'm also doing a lot of Ido Portal's stuff. I don't know if you've ever followed him or know much about him, but actually not just Ido Portal, but another guy called Yuri Mamerston, who's an acrobat. The guy's just a freak. He's just incredible. And so is Ido Portal. Like they're specimens really, and really devoted to their craft. So like the importance they talk about, the importance of sensational, and I'm following both of those, and their input on the stuff. Like I tried to do like a squat routine, for example, from Ido Portal's programming, and it was difficult. It was really difficult, and I felt like my knees were collapsing. I was going valgus knee because I was in my bare feet, because I didn't have that support structure, because I didn't have my heels on as such, the lifting heels. So it definitely makes a massive difference. So I've went and I've ordered some of those. I don't know if you've seen them advertised, but these outdoor socks. You try and cut them with a knife and stuff, and they can't cut them. So you've got to see how good they really are. So I've ordered 4 or 5 pairs of those. So definitely will be testing them out in the future and feeding back on those.
Are they kind of like
yeah,
all
the toes individual, all spread out. Yeah. So I wanna do that. And funny enough, my sciatica kicked off this week, and I touched base with all the usual things that help with sciatica. I rolled the glutes, I did my psoas, and that eased it off for most of that evening. The next morning, I got up and it was fine up until around midday. I started to kick in again. Now I've had sciatica on and off for a number of years, and I always know how to deal with it. I didn't at first, but obviously you learn, and I always cope with it, managed to train around it. It never ever impacted my training programs or my progress, just because I knew how to manage it correctly and just using the right soft tissue techniques and stretches, and it was fine. But actually, I rolled my feet with the ball, and actually the whole thing just I could just feel it. There was that sensation. It was painful as hell doing it. But I've rolled my feet with the ball for ages, but I've not thought to do it for quite a few weeks. And I think with all the stretching, I did kind of like elongated or stretched the nerve tissue, so it aggravated the nerve tissue, and I think that's why my sciatica was kicking off, because that sciatic nerve had been kind of stretched, a lot, and then the nerve tissue itself was being aggravated.
Have you done it?
I haven't done any flossing. I mean, there's so many tricks. That's the thing. There's so many bloody tricks, isn't there, to help and just relieve these things. Flossing's actually a great idea. I must do that. But the foot thing, anyway, it was good. It's not even noticeable anymore. Whereas I kind of always knew it was in the back wing. When it did my hip and my glutes, I always still knew it was kind of there and I needed to be wary of it. But no, it's completely gone. We're rolling out the feet. So it was actually the outside
as well, how kind of psychosomatic some of these symptoms can become when you've had them for such a long period of time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get it regularly. It's probably once a year it flares up. It's not regular thing.
I mean, it's something that happens to me a lot. Like I'll be absolutely fine, and then I'll think about it and I'll be like, oh, that hurts actually. And it's completely, I know it's completely psychosomatic, but like you can't switch that feeling off. And when there's kind of a neurological connection between those two things, it's quite interestingly how that can affect you. And then you get a barbell on you, and suddenly that's all you're thinking about, and then you miss lifts because of it. It's quite interesting how that actually affects kind of your mindset and how you behave physically, even though it's something that's sometimes it is obviously a problem, but sometimes it's completely in your head. It's quite interesting how
one thing I've actually found, and I would say that the majority of physios out there will disagree, but I'm happy to put it to the test in a physical capacity, because I've found it myself, and I'd be very interested to know. I'm not saying I'm right. What I'm saying is I'd be interested to find out how right I am, or wrong for that matter. But whenever I've had SAG in the past, sometimes just doing some really heavy glute work, not heavy glute work, but kind of medium glute work, where you really have to fire on the glutes to make the exercise happen, like good glute bridges or Bulgarian split squats or something, which are pretty nasty exercise. But what I found doing them, kind of flushing out the muscle, just tends to ease a lot of the nerve pain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
I found something quite similar with kind of heavy banded monster walks, that kind of stuff, just to get that glute just firing up, get some blood pumping to it. And yeah, absolutely, as a way to reduce kind of the pain in that area, I think it's kind of a fantastic way to do it. Kind of when you combine that with kind of your training, I found that if I do that before a training session, before anything where I would traditionally feel pain there, it is often kind of relieved massively if I just kind of get an increase in blood flow to that area and actually just getting moving. And I guess maybe just actively thinking, maybe just the psychological thing of, I've warmed up now, it's fine, as opposed to going in cold on it.
I do think that there has to be a physical element to it. I mean, it's so profound, the difference that I feel when I'm doing something like that. Like there's times when my SAG has been bad, and somehow intuitively I knew not to do anything heavy or even medium heavy. And I knew to rest it, and then I rest it, and it's fine. And then other times it's flare up, and I can't even put my finger on exactly what it is that I'm understanding about the whole thing. But I just know that I just need to flush that fucker out and just do some reps, and it'll be fine, And it's really hard as a coach then to try and take that kind of intuition, which you kind of know about your own body, to try and transfer that to someone else and figure it out for them. So that's a tough process.
Yeah, I certainly think it is difficult to understand. I think the only person that can truly understand how you're feeling is yourself. And I think a lot of the times, it takes knowing who you're training, and it takes knowing how they respond to things. Because some people, they have the smallest ache, and they're like, I can't do anything today, I'm just going to stay in bed. And then other people, they're in, especially if you look at kind of top level athletes and kind of your strong men and all that kind of stuff, they're in absolute bits, they're destroyed, they're taking painkillers and pushing themselves through all these things. And it's kind of finding that middle ground between the two and realizing actually, if you are injured, you do need to dial it down. But if there is a small thing, you need to kind of keep it working, because at the same time, the worst thing you're going to want to do is completely stop entirely. If you stop entirely, that's going to just make things worse and worse and worse. So
that's the one thing I don't believe in at all. I don't believe in the whole stopping entirely. Maybe not. There is no such thing as an absolute, in my opinion. So there are circumstances where I have done in the past where I've told people to stop completely, but it was probably more psychological than physical. In a physical sense, I don't think there's not a lot of times when you need to stop not do anything. I think the movement is so good for us, on so many levels. It's good for your digestive system, good for your mentality, good for your hormones, good for fucking everything. Your heart, your lungs, your kidney, everything. It really, really enhances everything we do. So even getting some fresh air, even if you've got a cold, getting out and getting some fresh air, you're probably going to get some positive microbes in the air, and there's so many good there's so many things that we don't think about. You think immediately we've got this culture of, you're sick or you're tired or you're injured, just rest, just don't do anything. And the doctors know that the first protocol for doctors to say, right, don't do anything for 2 weeks. You injure something, don't do anything for 2 weeks. And I've never found that a good idea.
We have a lot of people have kind of there was the original RICE principle, obviously the rest, ice, compress, elevate, and it turns out that kind of that's one of the worst things that we can do for anything, and they've kind of changed it to, it's called police now. I think Alex will have to remind me what's police stand for again. Oh, so yeah, optimizing load, kind of. Again, considering elevation, consider ice, but only kind of on the initial injury, and don't use it afterwards, because then obviously you can slow down recovery rates and whatever. But yeah, like, I think one of the most important ones of that's not in RICE is optimal load. Particularly considering examples like knee tendinopathy, knee pains as a direct result of squatting and whatever. And that's something that really needs to be considered. Is actually the worst thing we can do is completely rest it entirely. We want to put a little bit of load on it, if that's like just eccentric loading or whatever, or isometrics, doing something along those lines to actually rehabilitate the tissue, as opposed to kind of just being like, oh, let's just not do anything, because that's the way it becomes from being an acute issue to being obviously a chronic issue. So yeah, like the worst, even though it's, and what I was actually surprised by is that you actually need to be feeling a little bit of a small amount of pain in order to actually get progress from it. So if you have anything like tendinopathy, pain is, normal. And you should, you do want to push yourself to a certain extent. Obviously, it shouldn't be like, you shouldn't be like screaming or anything, but like a certain amount of
I mean, the guidelines that we learned in the masters was, up to 3 out of 10 on a pain threshold. Now, that's bearing in mind that you should have a pretty accurate evaluation of your own pain threshold. So if you're somebody who's never experienced a lot of pain, especially in a training environment, then you're probably not going to be that good at gauging this. But yeah, it certainly worked really well for me in the past, where you work up to like a 3 or 4 out of 10 during the recovery process, and don't go above that on the pain threshold. If it starts to get to 5 or 6, you probably pushed a bit too much. So I found that quite good. 10 being you've been ripped apart, and 1 being somebody's feet.
Yeah, I do think it is something that it does need to be considered, especially because I think there's different types of pain, and it's hard to actually understand whether something's a positive pain that's going to lead to kind of improvement, or if something's going to be a negative pain that's going to actually cause you kind of long-term damage or actually make the situation worse. And I think certainly have an understanding of those kind of issues is really important. I think as well, I think like the ultimate problem that we're kind of facing is how the internet's continued to, how everyone's so reliant on the internet now. And I think, when we face injuries, the first thing a lot of people do is they'll go on Facebook and they'll ask it to a group. I've seen like so many crazy questions. Like I was in a group the other day for runners, and someone's like, what do I need to do for my MCL reconstruction? What exercises can I do that I can fix it without surgery and whatever? And it's like, you shouldn't be asking this in a forum. You need to be asking this to a professional. And I think this is kind of something that's kind of being overused massively, as people are continuing to use kind of forums and areas where there's people that aren't professionals, and they're questioning that. A few times I've been in forums kind of for like all sorts of different things, and someone's asked a question in an area that I'd consider myself kind of an expert or a professional in, and kind of someone that is completely unprofessional has either disagreed with me or given completely different advice and it's from someone that's kind of not specializing in that field. So it's a worrying thing to have to deal with when people that are unqualified are kind of debating a subject with someone qualified. And it's
I actually had this, and this will be of interest to you actually, because he was vegan. I'm not naming any names. He probably won't listen to this, but we're still friends, so there's no bad blood. But it kind of come out with a lot of stuff that simply just wasn't true. It was a lot of nonsense. And just taken completely out of context, I guess. I corrected him because he was talking to my clients. He was talking to other members of the group, and I said, "That's I'm not going to allow that to happen because it's false information. It's not, none of that's substantiated. That's just your opinions on things. So yeah, don't talk like that. Don't talk about this stuff." And then he came back at me, so he's like, "Well, prove it then." So I'm fucking having to spend a bunch of time that I shouldn't have to spend, pulling up fucking studies to prove this guy's wrong, and really I shouldn't have to waste my time on that. But I felt it was important for the perception of the others in the group, so that they weren't jumping on board with him just because, he was loud enough, I guess, or he was, influential or whatever. I didn't want them doing that. And then, because I didn't correct them, they may associate, they might say, oh, he agrees because he hasn't corrected him. So I wanted to make sure that I got my thoughts across on it. And I mean, we know that there's, no such thing as fact or whatever, if you want to look at it that way, that science is progressing all the time. But you have to go with what, like you said earlier, you've got to go with what's the most recent. You've got to go with what's the most, well researched and well substantiated. And that's all I was doing. And some of the stuff that he was saying was just complete, like he picked it up off of fucking, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we kind of, especially with kind of things like this, especially with things like where there's a strong consideration of kind of like how you believe or what you want to believe. Especially when people want to believe something's true, will kind of go with something. A lot of people will go with kind of like, oh, this is true because I wanted to believe it. It's like kind of when we look at things like, the coronavirus and stuff, like with all the conspiracy theories, it's kind of like, I almost want this to be true. And then anyone that believes kind of, the organizations that you're supposed to believe, they're kind of, oh yeah, but that's what they want you to think. That's what they want you to think. And it's kind of like, you almost have to pick a side. Do you pick the side that, is the science-based side, or do you pick a side that's kind of, the conspiracy-based side? And you know what, 10 years down the line, we could look at it and go, actually, we were wrong. It was this. Yeah. But, I personally, I'd rather stick with kind of the actual scientific evidence and what that's suggesting and what the professionals are suggesting.
I think that the hardest part with this coronavirus is they seem to be scientists coming out on both sides of the argument, like quite a number on both sides of the argument. I do feel like it should be something that is openly debated. I mean, I find it very, very difficult. If you talk about picking sides, I find it very, very difficult to associate with one or the other, simply because what tends to happen is people bash somebody with the opposite opinion or different thoughts on themselves, and that just puts me right off, joining in any kind of conversation on it, because it shouldn't be about, oh, I've been called a sheep because I watched, I don't even watch BBC. I can't stand BBC, but I've been called a sheep because I didn't agree with that it was all conspiracy theory, and so on. But I've also been called a whack job because I said no, everybody should sit down and discuss where this thing came from, how it came about, and so on. And it's, I almost played devil's advocate on both sides. So I just, people need to find that middle ground and discuss within this middle ground, because it's neither extreme's likely to be true. Let's be honest. Bill Gates probably isn't a mad scientist. The Queen probably isn't a lizard. These things are probably not true, right? We never fucking know, but they're probably not true. And on the flip side, we're probably not been told the whole truth. I know this because, like, I spoke to somebody who's working with people currently in the NHS, and the public understanding of the virus being a respiratory virus, for example, it's not completely accurate, because it's actually more of a virus that affects the endothelial cell wall, and that can affect any of your organs because it affects the smaller capillaries. It can lead to stroke, heart attack, liver and kidney failure, and so on, which we've seen, in the documentation and people's death certificates. So, as I say, it's usually somewhere in the middle. It's the case with most things. It's never usually one extreme or the other extreme. There's always something happening on both sides. So, will there be people profiting from this? Of course there will. People profit from every depression. That's just the way depressions work. People profit. People suffer. That's been the same way throughout history for as long as fucking commerce has, existed.
It's kind of crazy how richest people in the world have profited from all this. Like, it's. They made more money than the people. I think I looked up a quote, and it was something to do with like the US I think 330. I think it was a number like 300 million or 100 and some. I can't remember the actual exact figure, but so there was certain. I think it can't be as high as 300 million, but I think it was 33 million Americans got furloughed or got lost their jobs or something. And at the same time, I think the top people in the world made so many billion, but it was enough to make. It was the amount they made could have paid each one of those people working like a very good living wage. Like every one of those 33 million people could have been paid a very good wage, which is kind of crazy considering it was 9 billionaires that made that money.
Yeah.
Really.
Looking at Jeff Bezos, the guy who owns Amazon, he's looking at being the first ever trillionaire. Apparently, I don't know if that's true or not true. There might be other trillionaires out there that I don't know about. But I think there was a thing I read anyway. He was saying he's shaping up to be the first trillionaire, and his profits have gone way up since the start of this virus. You know, because people are fucking bored and they're sat at home going, I'm going to buy this thing because it's going to make me happy for a period of time. You know.
I think the more time we spend on social media as well, the more time we're seeing all these adverts for all these things.
Fucking hell,
you can't like anything. You can't like the slightest. You can't like the smallest thing where you'll get marketed like crazy. Like an advert came up the other day for it was I don't know if you've seen them. It was like a seal cushion, a big seal cushion. It's like a cushion about that big, but it's of a seal. And they did like a meme, and it was like the girl, the guy, you, and then the guy your girl told you not to worry about. And it's like a picture of a normal seal, and then a picture of this seal cushion, and it says a chunky seal. And I liked this video. I liked this picture. And now I'm getting like 1,000 different adverts from all these different companies, all about this fucking seal pillow. I get it every single day. Like, I can't go on Facebook without seeing another one for it. And you know what? The adverts are so good, I kind of want to buy one. Like, I know I shouldn't be buying it, but I kind of want to buy one just because these adverts are so good. But like, this is what I'm saying. Like, I was talking about it before. Like, they show you 100 times, and on the 100 times you're feeling a little bit sad or something. You go, I'm gonna buy that seal cushion. That's gonna fix all my problems. So yeah, I need to stay strong and not buy this cushion now.
Those socks I talked about, I mean, I've seen them advertised for months, but I've never really had the time to get outdoors and do much running outdoors. I'm always busy with the gym. I know I've got all the time in the world, so fuck, I'm going to do some outdoor running with these things. But I've seen them hundreds of times, like.
It's like you were saying before though about like how many times people need to see your product in order to buy it. Like, there's certain people that'll just buy things right away, like they've got that compulsive behavior, and then there's certain people that they need to keep seeing it, and then I guess get them either when they're feeling weaker or whatever like that. So I think it's I guess that's something to kind of consider with kind of our own marketing, the way we kind of promote, like you were saying, the way we promote stuff ourselves.
It's definitely. I mean, that's what I'm doing at the minute is learning about. I mean, I am not technically gifted in regards to computers and so on. I haven't a clue. But at the minute, I'm in the process of learning how to do a Facebook advert campaign. I mean, I've never done one before in my life. I've never had to really. I've always picked up through word of mouth and so on. But it's a different world we're living in now, and we're communicating differently, and it may not change back ever, but definitely won't be changing back anytime soon. So we need to consider that and work around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is Alex there in the background?
Yeah, Alex is just in the back now. Yeah, at the moment.
I must get a chat with her about yoga actually. I know I just remembered Alex is a yoga teacher.
Yeah, Alex, yeah.
I'm always just getting that now. She is quite good, to be fair.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because obviously with her studying sports rehabilitation as well, like it's such a great ability to have like all this kind of knowledge on yoga, and then you need to loosen this, or you need to loosen this, and these are the exercises you can then use to loosen this and this and this and increase this and whatever, and you've got kind of a whole amount of tools that maybe someone else wouldn't have, or someone else would have to do research or whatever, and then it's just like, you just need to stretch this, you can just use this movement, or you can just use this movement, and kind of like the availability of just all that knowledge to actually apply to sports rehabilitation, or even to just help with developing mobility in athletes. And I think it's a super important tool to have.
I think yoga, I've heard it said somewhere before. I think it might have been Joe Rogan. And he said it perfectly. He just said, yoga is one of them things that every time you do it, you think, fuck, I need to do more of this.
Yeah.
It's one of, isn't it? It's like one of them. It's like, God, I need to do more of this. You know, every time you do it. And like for me, I was only doing it every, once in a while, whenever I had to do it or whatever, or whenever I just felt like it. Or I was making it a daily thing. It's just crazy how quickly it comes along, how quickly it progresses.
I love this attitude that so many people have, though, that yoga's going to be easy. Like all
Oh,
these like
man.
macho guys and
So
whatever
hard.
talking about how easy yoga is, and it's a girl's thing to do, and then you do it, and you're like, oh my god, this is hard.
Yeah.
This is really hard, especially when you're like holding a pose for like now that I'm working in Olympic lifting, I'm like I call it a one rep athlete. Like
Yeah.
I'm good for one rep, maybe hold something for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, or a minute, and yeah, it's just hard. It's really hard. And you're doing that for an hour or an hour and a half. We were talking about it before, actually. I remember I was saying I did a hot yoga class before I went weightlifting, thinking that I was going to be really loose for weightlifting. And then I couldn't even perform or do anything. I was just so exhausted because it was so tough. It was only an
So
hour.
much.
It wasn't
Like,
an hour and a half.
I mean, there's different varieties of it. Like, and Alex probably know better than me, but the ones that I've been doing, the Ashtanga and the Vinyasa, they can be really hard. Even at the beginner level, they can be really, really challenging, strength-wise. Like even some of the stuff that I can fight. I've found multiple places and elements I really, really need to work on in regards to my strength, not just my flexibility, but not so much as strength on its own, but in a combination of the two. Strength through a range. Like I can really, really feel where the range stops and therefore the strength stops. It's just it doesn't exist, or it's really, really weak. Like in a back bend.
This absolutely happens, and you absolutely see where people are just they're so strong in one range of movement. It's like when you see a lot of people half squatting, like quarter squatters, they're super strong from like 3 centimeters from the start of the squat back up, but then you get them like to drop below there and they can't even squat like a quarter of it. And when you get to those habits of not performing through full ranges of movement, you just become so weak in that range, and your flexibility gets poor and everything is kind of affected. And
it's a bit of a recipe for disaster for athletes, isn't it? Because if you're, for any reason, pushed past that limit where you're strong, pushed past that range where you're strong, then you're fucking up shit creek. Because something will snap, something will go. Because if you've been forced into that range, then you've had to be forced past the range where you're strong. So already the force being applied is greater than what you can manage, even in your strongest range. If you know what I'm saying. So once you're pushed past that range of what you can cope with, something's going to snap, something's going to give. And
I get the same way as well. Like, if you have that flexibility to get into that position, but you're weak in that position, then it counts for nothing, really, does it? Like if you're
exactly.
not strong in that position, then it doesn't really apply to anything.
I feel like strength and flexibility are like the two pillars. But I mean, endurance, there should be three pillars, really, I think. So and endurance can mean muscular endurance as well as cardiovascular endurance as a whole concept, even. But those three concepts are kind of like the three pillars of fitness, in my opinion. If you've got like a good level of each of those, you can do pretty well. Pretty versatile, good athlete.
I think as well, obviously considering kind of like another pillar on top of that would be kind of your mental attitude as well. Like just
yeah.
Because you can have all those things. Like how many people have you met that have got like the strength, they've got the flexibility, they've got the endurance, but they just don't have the mental.
I think like everything, to be honest, talk about pillars, but see the foundations, that's the mental attitude. Like you haven't got that mental. That's why I put that post up. That's why we're having this podcast, actually. I put that post up about if you don't get the mindset right, then it doesn't matter. The results, you either get them and not keep them, or you'll get them and be dissatisfied with them, or you won't get them at all. So that's my three experiences of people who, I've coached people who didn't work on the mentality because I wasn't doing it at the time. I wasn't really, offering that as a service. And so they got the results, lost like 5 stone, still weren't happy. Still, it didn't do for them what they expected it to do. So the reason, and then we started working on mindset within a few months. That's that thing about lateral thinking. It's like, you're working on something for 5 years and expecting to create a result. And then I try something completely new and possibly a little bit off the radar. and it works very, very quickly. So you can get maximum gains for minimal effort in regards to time. If you think laterally and think, adding things to it rather than just pushing in the same direction all the time. Now, obviously, it's. Sorry, go ahead.
That's kind of where like the results come in. Like it's like, what is the actual result you want? Like a lot of people think if I lose weight, I'm going to be happy, and the result is actually happiness. But they're not going to achieve that if they're trying to lose weight or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like the guys like Tyson Fury, like his result was to win the world championship or whatever, and then he won it and nearly killed himself afterwards because his mindset wasn't right, and it hadn't, just because you'd achieved that result doesn't mean you've kind of. I think people think like a result. You can achieve a result being kind of not in a positive state, but it's not going to be the result that you actually want.
Exactly. People need to do that mindset stuff at the start. That's why we approach it right away. And now you don't always get to it right away. Sometimes I think you have to go through the training process almost to find that out. And that's kind of what you were saying, I think. You were saying that, even if you're in a shit place mentally, you can do a training process, and that kind of helps you figure it out as you go along. And that's what I agree with. So I think that, but hitting the idea that they have to look inside at the beginning, it's getting them on that train right away, rather than taking them 2 years down the line through training, getting them whatever physical results, and then saying, oh, by the way, all that wasn't going to do what you wanted to do. So we have to go back to the drawing board, you know what I mean? Which is what I ended up having to do with some of my older clients because I wasn't doing it then. So as things have progressed, I've made it a point of day one, and I've found that because you're switching them onto that at day one, that those habits and things that you're saying is going to help you get there, like eating right and tracking and just having a better attitude or all around, those things you can get early on and influence. And if you can influence them, then the training process actually becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think the problem that a lot of people face is like, because they don't have the necessary body confidence that they need, or the necessary confidence within what they're doing that they need, that the goalpost always moves. So like, it doesn't matter where you get to. If your long-term goal was to lose, say, a stone, a week later, well, let's say 12 weeks later, you've lost your stone. The next goalpost is I want to lose another stone. Or the next goalpost is I want to look like this person on Instagram, or I want to look like this. And you're never really going to be happy with the results you're getting if you're not, getting some sort of change in your mind, because you can't compete with these people that are using filters, and
yeah, it's not real anyway. None of it's
yeah, exactly. Like, I think this is the problem. Like, a lot of people with social media, they just kind of don't realize that a lot of it's fake and a lot of it's not real.
Yeah, definitely, especially when it comes to body image. I mean, I don't even want to if we start on that, we'll never get off this one, but because that's a whole can of worms in itself. But yeah, definitely, I think that's definitely true. People need to look at what it is they're really after, but then also, like you mentioned earlier, learn to enjoy the process of it. Like the gym being a big part of their day, for example, and a positive part of their day. I think that's a really important thing to try and establish, to enjoy the process. Because if you enjoy something, you'll continue to do it, even if you're not getting results, because you enjoy doing it anyway. So even if you're not seeing, and I teach this model in here, and it's really true for a lot of things. It's called the Valley of Disappointment. I don't have anything to draw on, so I have to do it with my fingers in the air. But I said we got a graph here. We've got time along the bottom, and we've got progress going here. And we kind of expect this nice straight linear line going up the middle. You do the work, you get the exact results proportionate to the work you put in. But I mean, we both know that that's a load of nonsense. That's not true. What tends to happen is this: fuck all happens, and woo. You know what I mean? So it took me 6 months to learn how to overhead squat. Then in the next year, I was snatching 60 kilos. You know what I mean? It worked really fast once I got past those few limiting factors. But a lot of the boring, crappy work done at the start felt like I was getting nowhere, when actually I was just on the path that I needed to be on.
I think a lot of people don't kind of the results we're kind of getting are playing a factor down the line. And then obviously this little thing here is, gonna play dividends later on. I think people they look at it kind of as in there's like almost putting savings in the bank and it's going like that, as opposed to kind of buying stocks and it's going.
Yeah.
You're going to get that result from it in the long term. I think people see it kind of as a short-term thing. And I don't think it helps that we kind of have all these programs like, oh, get ripped in 6 weeks or whatever. And we have the fitness industry kind of piling them out. And it's almost like that's what people expect now. Like people expect.
You know what? This is actually true. It's just you mentioned 6 weeks, and it's actually happened this week in our community. So a few people have been falling off the bandwagon as such, and they've not been doing the training, and I've had to check in with them over and over and over again. Some people are killing it as well. So we've got two sides, just like yourself. But I says, right, I'm going to run a 6 week. I just wanted to trial this and see if it would work. So I said, I'm going to run a 6 week challenge for you. Everybody's on board. Everybody's like, oh yeah, 6 weeks, because they think that they can stop. They think that, right, once that 6 weeks is done, I can focus for this amount of time, and then I don't have to focus after that. And it was in some ways, and some of my members are going to look at this now and think that fucker, right? But that's life. It was kind of annoying. I was like, come on, guys, this is not what we've been teaching you for years. But it's so ingrained in them. It's so ingrained in the general population. I mean, when I'm thinking of my yoga journey, for example, I didn't think 6 weeks. I was thinking, right, what am I going to be like a year in the line? Will I be good enough to apply to be a yoga teacher at that point? You know, or will it take 2 years, or will it take 3? And that was my thinking on the whole thing. How many years will this take me? Not how many weeks will this take me? And people are just, you can't get that switch change over.
I mean, it still happens. Like if you see like, I think you're like, oh, maybe it could work. Maybe, you know, like you see like, I see a program all the time, and it's like, they do the splits in 4 weeks or whatever.
Oh, I've seen that one, yeah.
Oh, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could try that. I'm like, but wait a minute, I know like all the things that are going to be talked about in this program. I know everything that's going to be there. I know what they're going to be including. I know it's going to be probably PNF stretching, and you know, then do the.
There's no new things. It's all old tricks.
Exactly. So it's like, I know this, but like I'm still like, I see it and I'm like, we can learn the splits in 3 weeks though. Like there's still, maybe I'm like, I guess it's almost in a way it's like a quest for knowledge. Like maybe they know something I don't. Like again, that's something that we all fall into, and I think that happens a lot with the 6 week stuff. Like, oh, maybe they just know something that I don't know about food or nutrition.
Apparently, in marketing, this is called a suspensive belief. So you have to suspend people's belief. So you have to tell them something that they don't think they're capable of. You have to throw their 4 minute mile at them, so to speak. So like, I never fucking in a million years believe I could achieve the splits in 4 weeks, right? And so that's what this guy's like hitting. So he's thinking, oh my God, no, I found a way to do this kind of thing, so you can too. And like, I don't know. But this is.
Look at that guy. There's no way he's not been flexible all his life. Like he's a gifted flexibility guy, like without a doubt. If it's the same person I'm talking about, like you look at it and it's like you've done that for all your life. Like,
what that guy's likely have done, right? And this is something that Ash has done this week, right? So Ash has always been super flexible. My partner, for anybody who doesn't know, but she's always been flexible. And she did yoga and a lot of flexibility training when she was younger. But she hasn't trained in years, like in 2 babies since and so on. But she says, right, I'm going to get splits this week. I was like, what? Fucking haven't done anything in years. But because the foundation's there, she literally did. She trained a couple of times that week and then had the splits by Friday. And I was like, you fucker. And she couldn't do it. You know, on Monday, she couldn't do it. But she literally got the splits in a week. But it's because the foundation was there. She'd already been there. And that guy's probably done the exact same thing. So yes, while he might have got the splits in 4 weeks from not being able to do the splits on day one, he probably could have done the splits 10 years ago, and that capacity was already there. It just needed to be stretched, because you're talking about structurally changing the length of a muscle. If my structure does not allow for the splits right now, then structurally changing the length, changing the amount of sarcomeres in a muscle is not a fucking fast process. That's a long ass process. This guy's talking about doing that in 4 weeks. It's fucking nonsense.
You were telling me a story about one of the experiences you had where someone was jumping on your legs in a squat line here as well.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. One of my old CrossFit coaches, this is one of the bad points about CrossFit. I'll not name him and shame because it's not right. But he was jumping on me and I was like holding the bar here and he had his hands on the bar, pushing down there from my front rack. And he had his feet either side of my hips, like and the hip priest fucking pushed me into the squat. You know, it's a miracle I wasn't snapped then, like at that point.
Well, this is I think a thing that happens with yoga. Like, since yoga has become a lot more commercial and has become a lot more kind of, oh, I've just got to post like my Instagram, get on my Instagram, show my yoga photos. Like, the amount of injuries that have occurred through yoga is like shot through the roof.
Yeah.
Because it used to be a nice progressive thing, but now like there's a lot of like ego-driven yoga teachers that are like, oh, I need to be able to do this really complicated pose, and then they end up injuring themselves because and the actual rate of injury is done up. And then I also think there's a lot of kind of bullshit within the yoga industry as well. Like, you've got someone that that's clearly flexible, pretending they can only lift the leg like off the floor, and then it says 6 weeks later, and they've got like a full like negative splits or something that they're doing. It's like, I know you're just trying to sell your course here, but like there's better ways to do it. I think there's some really good people, and there's obviously like the chances as well.
It's just getting that attention. It's purely an attention game. It's an attention grabbing game. You've got to get out there and grab attention. Now, it's fucking really difficult to do that without going for some kind of suspending belief. The easy way to do it is you can't get in ridiculous shape in 6 weeks if you put the work in. Like me and you, we've both had clients where we've got them in great shape within a 6 week time frame, or I've even done, you know, sometimes a 4 week time frame. So it's not that it can't be done. It's just that it's not going to be. It's not the answer. It's just like giving a piece of information out of context. Yes, this person can get here in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. But if they don't do anything for the next 6 weeks, they're going to be back where they started. You know, so you're not giving the full story. You're just giving a part of the story that looks really good on social media, and then neglecting to say, by the way, you've got to keep this up. You know, so, I don't know. It's very, very hard to do marketing wise. I'm trying to be as ethical as I can in my marketing, whilst also trying to fucking get somewhere. And I mean, a lot of it's connecting with people on a personal level. But again, without getting that attention first, it's very hard to get that connection. So in order to get the connection, you kind of need something that's going to attention grab. So whilst I can understand these coaches and yoga instructors doing that kind of marketing in order to grab attention, I really wish that they would come clean then and be like, look, I got your attention now, right now I'm going to come clean and tell you that what that was a load of nonsense. And here's the real story. It took me 3 years, you know what I mean?
I think this is kind of the thing I struggle with as well, is that it's very difficult to sell a long-term goal. Like, it's
This is my point. This is my point. Nobody wants to commit to a long-term process. Nobody. People need buy-in, and in order to get buy-in, you need a short-term. Like, you can do this. Like, whenever we market our course for a fixed fee every month, right? Not many people interested. We do it for 3 months, 12 weeks, the exact same price, just in a bulk payment at the start, and then you got the 12 weeks. People buy it. It's the same with the Crucible course. The Crucible was never, you know, sold as a 12-week package. People willing to pay £1,000 a month or £1,000 for 12 weeks training, no problem, no issue. But if you had split that up into 333 per month and told them that they had to keep paying that forever and ever, or not forever and ever, but you know, for a few months, even for 3 months, they look at it differently. They think about it differently.
I mean, I reckon if you said it's £100 a month for 10 months, even though they were getting a better deal, because it's a long-term thing, like they wouldn't want to kind of jump in on that and be like, oh, you're actually getting all this extra, but at the same time, like, you wouldn't want to jump in because it's a long-term commitment. I don't want to do a long-term commitment and get more for it. I think that's what a lot of people like to do.
Yeah.
I guess it's like to have a way out. You know, like it's only 3 months. I can commit myself to that time, but I can't commit myself to 10 months or whatever. Like it's actually, yeah. I guess it's actually being able to commit to doing something as opposed to, you know.
That's I mean, that's why 6 week challenges probably first started. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the first trainer or whatever to do 6 week challenges and 12 week challenges didn't anticipate or didn't think, right, I want to get these people results and then they're going to go back to being shitty again afterwards. I'm sure they didn't intend to do that. I'm sure they intended to keep people on, you know, and have a fallback system that once you finish this, which is what we done with our Crucible. So once they finish the Crucible, it's like, well, look, if you really enjoyed that, got a lot from it, we do this all the time. why don't you do this one? It's a little bit less crazy, and you can do it for foreseeable. And we did get a lot of transfer over. You know, you're getting about 4 or 5 out of 8 out of 10 sometimes. So it was good, but you know, it's tough. It's a tough game. The PT game. It's fun. It's a lot of fun, but it can be very ethically, or morally is a better word. Be morally kind of. You have to, you know, you have to approach it the right way. It's quite hard to think about it the right way.
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of people kind of that are out there just for the wrong reasons, really. And I think that's the thing that can hopefully change. Hopefully, if we, you know, in the next couple of years, get a little bit more either legislation or a little bit more governing in PT courses, in the way we coach, and maybe a little bit more kind of like an example, a set example on how we coach, as opposed to being basically free reign to do whatever we want, say whatever bullshit we want to say, and kind of go from there. I think that's the way we need to kind of switch it, is to make it a little bit more of an honest business, because there's certainly a lot of dishonesty out there, you know, with the results people are getting, with what people are actually like. There's a lot of people that are, you know, using drugs and using whatever, and saying that's, oh, this, you can achieve the same result as me, but I didn't do this or this or this, and just kind of not giving you the whole picture of exactly what they've been doing. And I think that's something that just needs to be a little bit more honest and a little bit more open, hopefully, in the business, you know, for the next couple of years. But hopefully we'll see how that changes.
Yeah, it plays out. Well, what's next? What's next for you, bud? We'll wrap it up after. What's next for Jake? And
I mean, hopefully, when gyms reopen again, get the club going again. Get a few of our people in the club weightlifting. Get a few more members in. Hopefully, expand that into kind of university as well. So we're looking at maybe kind of getting some links with, when I start the course, hopefully maybe getting some links with Bolton University with regards to weightlifting, and kind of just improving the overall availability of weightlifting in the area, really. And then for myself, master's course starts in September, so kind of hopefully passing on some of that information, helping to keep people injury free, and then continuing to kind of promote the message from it, really.
Nice
stuff.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks very much for coming on, buddy. That was great. Really good. Enjoyed it. We'll do this again at some point, and I'll see you again soon, bud.
Thanks a lot, mate.
No worries, bud.